away from cash in. Your wastage should be a crime of all that precious Vegas time. No gourmet meals, no freaky sex, just 8 hours of beds and kicks. Your day's so long, mine's so short. All that bad luck you gotta thwart. One bad hand just stacks in tatters, and then I sit down when it matters. Backslate registration, 3/4 already gone. Backslate registration, almost cash when my seed is drawn. You will survive, oh yeah, if you don't arrive, oh yeah. Backslate registration. Now watch me dodge my blood.
Welcome to Poker Fraud Alert Radio. I'm your host, Todd Dan Druff with Tellus. This is being brought to you live and recorded live on June 4th, 2026. The time right now, 2:52 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The song I opened with is called Max Late Registration, which I actually made myself. It's a song by me. Now, I didn't sing it, of course. It was AI singing it, but I wrote the lyrics, and I guided the AI into singing it the way that it was done, because I had to do it in the form of an 80s hair band, a late 80s hair band, and this was not easy. I couldn't just tell it what to do and have it just make a perfect song, because every version it was making was awful. I would have been embarrassed to play it to you. So after a lot of tweaking, I actually got this version, which is far and away the best version it was able to generate from a number of tweaks I made from the versions it was previously generating. And again, I wrote the entire thing. All it basically did was make the music. So I like messing around with these tools, and of course it's very topical. There's more and more talk about the late registration being unfair and really warping these tournaments, and a lot of people want to see it reformed. And hey, I've been saying this for the last 10 years, so I'm glad the world has finally caught up to me. So that was my song about it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're listening on YouTube, you can go back and check, because the song, when it's playing, the rest of the show is going to have a radio logo up there like it always does, but the song itself, you'll see the little video with the lyrics and the pictures associated with it. So once in a while I actually do something on YouTube other than just slap up the show with a logo for the video. Anyway, I am at the World Series of Poker right now. I am staring out my window and looking at the Las Vegas Strip as I broadcast this to you. It's always nice being here. You just get a different perspective by being at the World Series than being elsewhere and just reading about it. So I always like being able to come here and bring you the on-the-ground reporting of what is going on. But we have other topics tonight, and we will get to those too. You never know what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. I always think, what if just there's nothing interesting that goes on? What if there's really nothing controversial or unusual, and it's just players playing and winning bracelets, and what am I going to do? Report, such and such person just won a bracelet? I mean, someone's going to win every time, so that's not a very interesting report. That's not what you guys want to hear. You guys want to hear the strange and controversial stuff. But somehow every year at the World Series, we get new things, including things we would never think would ever happen. And that is the case once again this year, at least so far, in this early World Series, which began on May 26th. So it's only a little bit more than a week old, but we already have some things that have happened that I will tell you about. So we have a number of World Series stories. So that's our show. And if you want to call, you can't. But you can text me, 775-372-8355. That spells 775-FRAUD55. Still don't have the phones working. I will eventually get to that. And you can go in the chat room if you like. In fact, I'm not even in the chat room yet. That's kind of embarrassing. I'm going to join the chat room right now. Now, to be honest, there's not a lot of chatting in the chat room these days because the show's on in the middle of the night. And there's really only anyone there when I'm on the show. But if you'd like, I have the chat room open. You can type something in there if you don't want to text me. Those are the two ways to get a hold of me during the show. and the text will work anytime, before, after, or during the show. Remember, we have our streaming reruns, which are constantly running on the radio page on Poker Fraud Alert. Just go to the radio tab on pokerfraudalert.com, or you can call the Call to Listen line. Yes, the Call to Listen line. It's just a number you call up and listen to the show. It's very simple. It doesn't require a smartphone, a computer, a data plan, even a good connection. Nothing. You just make a phone call. That's it. Never buffers, never freezes. The Call to Listen line, 518-931-1189. It can be used to listen to the live show or the streaming reruns. 518-931-1189. We've had millions of minutes listened to on there. And I even fixed it not too long ago so it stops crashing. Or I shouldn't say it stops crashing, but if it crashes, it puts itself back up. That's a development that happened a few months ago when I got tired of having to manually put it up when people would text me, hey, the Call to Listen line's down. So now it puts itself back up. Okay, so if you want to find the show in podcast format, we are on many, many platforms. iTunes, the TuneIn app, iHeartMedia, Spotify, YouTube, which is the most important one, YouTube. We are on there. We don't have all the shows there from the past, but we have everything like starting a few years ago up till now. And every new show will be posted up there. And I do get a little bit of money, a little bit, if you listen on YouTube, but don't feel pressured to do it. I try to keep the ads to a minimum. I place them myself, so if I let YouTube do it, it would be appearing like every 8 minutes, and that's insane. So I don't let them do it. I place it much more sparingly because I don't want to inundate you with ads, even though it'll make me more money. I want the show to be pleasant to listen to. So I place them in good spots and only every once in a while. But if you don't want to listen on YouTube, don't. I'm just telling you it's there. Then we're on Audible, Odyssey. Actually, scratch that. I think Odyssey is gone. Forget Odyssey. I think I checked that and it's gone. I don't know why. I didn't ask them to put me up there either. They just slapped me up there. I'm like, okay, cool. And now I'm gone. So I don't know. Maybe I offended them in some way. Amazon Alexa, you just say, Alexa, play Poker Fraud Alert Radio Podcast. Say that slowly. It'll play the last episode. And if you say next, it'll go to the previous episode. Kind of backwards, but that's the way it works. And last I checked, we're on CastBox as well. And I'll usually get these up within a few days of the show. Sometimes they take a little bit longer. I used to be so fast, but then I decided to start editing the show. I used to not edit the show. I used to just slap the raw show up on the archives. And I said, I think I want to edit out the fail and the pauses and technical difficulties so the whole thing flows better. And then I just kind of got used to doing that. Now I can't not edit it. So that's the reason for the delay. But the show does appear sometime after the live broadcast. I'll try to get this one up pretty quick since it's timely information about the World Series. Of course, I said that last time I took a week, but I'll be a lot faster than that this time. Okay, so let's just get going. Our first topic, and these are going to all be World Series topics. The first topic is a personal topic, and that is about the PFA hashtag on X regarding the World Series. Now, we've had this before going all the way back to 2012, and something I don't enjoy doing is redoing technical work that I've done in the past. By the way, hello to Garrett, who I see is in the chat room. He once co-hosted this show and did a good job. I'll give Garrett that. And people were surprised. There's some people on the forum who didn't like him, and when he came on to be the co-host, even they admitted he did a good job. But anyway, Garrett's listening, and he's back in South Florida. He took a nice cruise that took a few weeks, and he posted a lot of great pictures up on Poker Fraud Alert of Europe. He went all around Europe, and it looked like a very nice cruise, a lot of good port stops. And he went out. He didn't just sit on the ship. He went out and experienced the culture in every place he went to. So it was a very good thread. People really liked it. Again, even his detractors admitted it was a great thread. So hello to Garrett. I see him in the chat room. Sorry to interrupt myself there. So let's get back to the Poker Fraud Alert hashtag. The Poker Fraud Alert hashtag was something that you could post at the World Series of Poker related to an event you're playing. You could tweet it without ever going to Poker Fraud Alert, and it would automatically post your tweet to the appropriate thread on Poker Fraud Alert. Poker Fraud Alert has a World Series of Poker subforum, and I make one for every single year of the World Series. So each year's World Series has its own little subforum in the World Series of Poker subforum. It's like a sub-subforum. And from there, I make threads for certain events. Now, I don't make the threads for all 100 so events that they have, because most listeners are not going to play most events Or if they do, they're not going to do this live tweeting. But I do it myself, the live tweeting, and I make this available to any users here or listeners here, whatever you might be, to also do the same thing and have your tweets about each event show up in the appropriate thread without having to log into the system and make posts. It's much more convenient for you to just tweet. So in 2012, I wrote something that basically scans Twitter, and when you use that hashtag, it automatically posts to the right place on Poker Fraud Alert. Now, the one caveat was that I would have to make the thread for whatever event that you wanted to play in advance because, as I said, I have to set these up manually, and I'm not going to do it for every single event. So if you want to do this, please let me know. Tell me what thread you want me to create for which event. Just say, I'm playing such and such event. I'm going to live tweet. Can you create this? And then it's very simple. You just do hashtag PFA, like Poker Fraud Alert, PFA, and the number. It's always a 2-digit number. If it's a single-digit event, it's 0 something, like 08. And if it's a 2-digit event, which is everything now going forward, then you just do the event number. So event number 30 would be hashtag PFA 30. It's very simple. And then it'll automatically post to Poker Fraud Alert in the right thread, provided I've created it because you told me in advance, or I already created it because either I'm playing or somebody else is playing. So right now there's only 2 up there at the moment. I made it for the 2 I played, but I'm going to make more. I got some requests from Matt the Rat and from some other people, so I'm going to, after the show's over, I will probably create some more. In fact, I have to because I'm playing later today, so I have to make one for myself for sure. And you can live tweet there, and people from Poker Fraud Alert can see your progress. And you may ask, well, why even do this? Why not just have people look on X to see the tweets of those people that are playing? Why even have this? Well, first of all, not everybody knows the X accounts of each Poker Fraud Alert user. In fact, most people don't. In fact, even I don't. And second, there'll be a lot of other tweets you make about other things, and it's cool to have a thread for each event that people on this forum and radio listeners play that you can just go back to it at any point and just see all the tweets related to that event and nothing else. That's a good way to follow. In fact, sometimes I go back to some of my old tweets when I try to remember, okay, what happened at this event in 2018? And I kind of have an idea, and I go back and look what I tweeted about my events. I go, oh, yeah, I remember it now. So it creates like a historical perspective on everything I play at the World Series, and you can do it for yourself too. So just wanted to announce that's back. And before I move on, you may ask, well, wait a minute. Why was it gone? Why do you say it's back? You made it in 2012. Why would you ever take that down? And that's where I get back to the whole point of not enjoying redoing work. So I had to redo this work completely because when Elon Musk bought Twitter and turned it into X, one of the changes he made, which I did not like, I liked a lot of the changes he made, but one change he made that I really didn't like was the elimination of the ability to use their own system to search for the tweets, which is the most important part. Yeah, if I can't find the tweets with that hashtag, then the whole thing doesn't work. So he basically removed it for free, which it used to be a free service up to a certain point, and that was enough for me to do for free. He changed it to become very, very expensive to do this. Now, technically, could I have afforded to continue doing this the way Elon Musk did it? Yes, I could have. But the question would be, do you think I wanted to pay money to continue doing this? And it wasn't just like a few bucks. It was sort of expensive. Way too expensive for what we're doing here and the value it really brings. So do you think I would want to pay for that just because something that used to be free now costs a lot of money? No, of course not. Maybe some other people would. But just, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I have nothing against Elon, but I couldn't bring myself to pay just to provide this function during the World Series. So I just turned it off. And it wasn't available in 2024, 2025, and it wasn't going to be available in 2026 until I decided to research if there's a way around this. And there was. There are third-party services which kind of do the same thing, but it's more complicated to program, and I really had to tear down what I did before and completely rebuild it. So I did. I actually took the time this year to completely rebuild it. And hopefully that third-party service doesn't go down at some point, because then I'll have wasted my time. But at least it works right now. So I'm not going to get into the technical details of what I did, but it does work again. And at minimum, I will be using it, so it won't go to waste. In fact, I've already used it. If you want to see it in action, just go to the World Series of Poker 2526 subforum on Poker Fraud Alert in the World Series of Poker forum, and you will see it. You'll see an example of how it looks. Just wanted to mention that. Then we will get to a second thing having to do with me, and that is I returned to the World Series. And when I say I returned to the World Series, I returned and I played immediately. How immediately? I played within like half an hour of when I got to my room. So basically, I came in, I checked in, and I played. I went right to the series after I checked in. Why did I do that? Because I was already late. My original plan was to drive into Vegas in the morning of June 1st. That was a Monday. I was going to drive in the morning. I was going to drop my son off at school and be all ready to go right back home, load my stuff in the car, jump in the car, and get to Vegas around the time the event I wanted to play, which is the Mixed Omaha, the 1500 Mixed Omaha, event number 14, would begin. And I wasn't obsessed with getting there right on time because I don't need to. You don't have to play right at the beginning. You can late register. They would take late registration all the way up until near 9 o'clock. So even though the event started at 2, I figured, even if I get in there 2:30, 3, it's completely fine. The first hour is not that important anyway. So I figured I was going to have plenty of time, and maybe I'd even be there in time to start at 2. But if I wasn't, no big deal. It'd be kind of near that. That was my plan. Well, what ended up happening that day was my son wasn't able to go to school. So I thought to myself, well, okay, I'm really, really tired because I stayed up very late the night before. I didn't mean to, but I had a lot of things to do before I left. So I stayed up very, very late the night before. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be tired at the World Series today, but I'll just deal with it. So I found out that he was not able to go to school that day because he was sick. And I thought to myself, okay, well, now I don't have to jump out of bed and take him. Now I can go back to sleep for half an hour or so and then get ready. Well, I was so tired that I forgot to set the alarm. So I just went back to sleep and then didn't wake up for several hours. So I had like a long dream, and then I woke up and I'm like, this couldn't be a half an hour. This feels like I was asleep for a long time. And I have a good sense of that. In fact, even when I got a colonoscopy, you know how people talk about when they get colonoscopies and they get under the general anesthesia, and to them it just feels like they feel themselves getting knocked out by the anesthesia, and then it feels like a second passes and then they wake up and it's done. That's never been my experience in my 2 colonoscopies. I felt the passage of time. I'm not saying I had any conscious thinking during it, but when I woke up both times, I felt like I had been asleep for about an hour. And in both cases, I was asleep for about an hour. So I was actually correct in my determination of how long I'd been asleep. It didn't feel like I went to sleep and woke up immediately. So usually I can kind of have an idea of how long I've been sleeping. Once in a while I'm wrong. Sometimes I'll feel like I've slept a very long time and it turns out it was a short time. Sometimes I'll feel like I was only sleeping a short time and it was a long time. But usually I have a pretty good idea, and I'm actually surprisingly good at guessing the time it is, even if the room has blackout curtains and I couldn't otherwise tell from how light it is outside. I could tell that I'd been sleeping a while. And I said, oh, shit. I way overslept this. I mean, I should have gotten up right when my son told me he couldn't go to school. I should have gotten up then and gotten ready anyway. Because also I hadn't completely packed. I hadn't completely done everything. So I was already going to be later than I wanted. And now I slept several hours past that. So I said, oh, shit, not only am I afraid that I'm going to register pretty late, I'm afraid I'm going to miss it entirely. I'm afraid I won't even be able to max late reg. Not only that, I had like 4 stops to make before I drove to Vegas of some final things I had to do at various businesses around town that I won't bore you with, that were essential to get done that day. So those were all going to take time. So I'm like, oh my God, I have just so much to do. I have to finish packing. I have so much to do. And then I have to make this drive to Vegas. And also, by the time I was done with all this, I knew I'd be running into traffic because now it was in the late afternoon. Mid to late afternoon, I should say. I was getting pessimistic whether I was going to make it or not. The good news was, despite hitting a good deal of traffic getting out of the LA area, once I got to Victorville, I was able to make pretty good time. So I did all my checking in, and not only that, I had to take a little time with checking in, because if you're going to have a hotel room for a while, as I do here, I want it to be a room that I want and a location that I want and all that. So it's one thing to take a substandard room for a day or two, but when you're here for a while, you got to make sure you get the room you want. So I had to put some time into that. Anyway, by the time I set foot into the World Series of Poker to begin my day at the Mixed Omaha, we were only a half an hour away from the end of late registration. Now, the end of late registration is after 6 hours of play. Not 6 hours after the event starts, 6 hours of play, so the breaks don't count. The levels were 40-minute levels, so they were doing 3 levels every 2 hours. So this meant at the end of level 9 is when the max late registration would end, though they do give you that break after that. So basically, once level 10 begins, once they deal the first card for level 10, you can't register anymore. So I didn't quite do the max late registration. I was half an hour away, so I did play half an hour before that final break prior to level 10. But as you can imagine, I came in pretty short-stacked. You start off with 25K in chips, which sounds like a lot, but not when you're in level 9. So I thought, okay, well, this will be interesting. See what I can do with this. I had never registered that late for this event. The only other time I registered this late was, or it wasn't this late, but I registered late for it by several hours in 2022, because it actually took place during the main event, and I just happened to have busted the main event in 22 on day 2. And I thought, okay, well, I'll jump into the Mixed Omaha, whatever. So I did, but I didn't come in super late. That was an interesting event for me because I cashed in it despite having a short stack the entire way. Because, of course, I started with a short stack coming hours late. And forget not getting to average. I mean, I was an actual short stack the entire way. From the moment I sat, all the way up until I hit the money, all the way up until I busted. Somehow I just couldn't die. I ran incredibly well in all-ins. I was in so many all-ins. And you guys know how Omaha is. That in Omaha, unlike in Hold'em where you can be crushing the opponent pre-flop and you have a very high chance to win, in Omaha there's no situation like that. Every hand has an okay chance against every other hand all-in pre. So for me to survive tons of all-ins was incredibly lucky back then. But I also got very unlucky in all other hands that weren't all-ins. So I was perpetually a short stack. It was the weirdest thing. And I gave some credit to myself. You know, I did some very good short stack play there in general. And I also made a very tough call on the river where I had a pretty bad hand, and I correctly called what was an accidental bluff because the guy was confused about what he had. So I guess if he had the hand he thought he had, I would have been busted, but I called correctly because he misread his hand, and I was right. That was back in 22. Anyway, let's get back to 26. So I pretty much had to chip up pretty quickly if I wanted a chance. Now, this wasn't quite as desperate as high games like Omaha High or No Limit Hold'em, because there's a lot of split pots in these games. In fact, all the games in the Mixed Omaha are split pot games. So there's a lot of times that you'll get involved in a hand all in and just split it, which doesn't really do you very much good, but you also don't bust. So there's a lot higher chance that you'll get involved in all-in situations in this event and survive without really gaining, but you also won't lose. So while it's not doing a lot for you, it also makes it to where it's not where the all-ins are either going to chip you up or knock you out. There's this middle ground that occurs a lot in the Omaha high-low. So I was not killing it at any point. I never chipped up really fast. I was sitting there short stacked for a while. Really, I had one good pot the entire event, and that was when I got it in with a good hand that had ace of hearts and another heart, so it gave me the draw to the nuts there, and also low cards, so it gave me chances to make several lows, and I ended up scooping the whole pot 3 ways. Now, one of the stacks was even shorter than mine by a wide margin, but there was another guy who was a similar stack to mine, a tiny bit smaller. So I almost doubled off him. And then I got the additional short stack there. So that was very nice. I scooped the whole pot by making the flush. We were all in pre. But I ended up making the flush. And I also ended up making the low hand. So that was very nice. But really, that was the only good pot I had the entire time. The rest of the time I was either winning or losing small to medium pots. But I kept myself alive. And I did make day 2. Now, that wasn't that big of an accomplishment because I was entering with only 4 hours of play left. There was already a good deal of the field out by the time I came into the event. And that's what I was talking about last time with the max late registration. Remember last show I talked about whether max late registration is good or bad? And I mentioned how it actually is an advantage, even though it robs you of the ability to play early. It robs you of the ability to stack up a lot of chips early and then just dominate. That it's also just a big edge to not bust all that time and have all these people bust ahead of you. That by the time you take a seat, that most people are busted. When I sat, there was like more than 60% of the field out already. So even though I was short, I'm thinking, okay, good. I've already outlasted more than half the field without doing anything. So yeah, I have to get lucky here, but I still think this is a big edge. So anyway, I made day 2. And on day 2, I didn't get the best table draw. I ended up with some tough players, especially after some people busted and they got replaced with some very good players. So it definitely was not an easy table. I did run up my stack from, I think I came in with 74K, which wasn't very good for day 2. It's triple of what I started with. It wasn't very good because we weren't that far from the money coming to day 2. And I ran it up to 180. And then from there, I couldn't win any hands. So I was a slow trudge downhill. It's one of those things where I was either splitting every pot or losing every pot with nothing else happening. I wasn't losing anything huge, but I just wasn't winning, and I was getting a combination of blinded down and just losing small pots and losing that way. So I got shorter and shorter, and I was out, but not before I cashed. And I wasn't even one of the first ones out after the money hit. And in fact, when the money hit, I was still kind of slowly going down from that 180K high, which 180K was a little above average. So I just want to say for all the max late reg haters out there, I went from the short starting stack to above average shortly before the money. And I really only did it with one good hand, plus a lot of other small to medium pots that I won in various ways. Sometimes it was just having the best hand. Sometimes it was bluffing it. But the bottom line is that I was able to run it up without incredible luck. It's not like I was just getting big pot after big pot that was landing my way because my cards were good. It wasn't like that. I'm not saying I ran bad. I'm not saying I was unlucky. I wasn't. But I'm telling you that I didn't have like insane run good to get me there. So I got to above average with not the money pretty close. And from there, I could have gone anywhere. I could have kept winning. I didn't, but that's just the way the cards fell. At that point, it turned around and I stopped winning anything. And so I just slipped down and eventually busted. The bust hand was kind of frustrating, even though I was down to like almost nothing by this point. And it wasn't that I was getting blinded down. It's I was getting like chopped down. So every time I got in, I would end up chopping it, or I get 3/4 on the other side. I got quartered. So I kept slipping down despite going all in a lot of times. And I only had 22K and got it in. I really thought I was going to at least win the high because I had middle set and all he had was top pair. And he went runner, full house over my middle set. So that was kind of frustrating. But I was almost dead by that point anyway, so it wasn't that frustrating. And I almost made the next level above the min cash. They changed the payout structures this year. Maybe they did it last year. I didn't really look, but I noticed for sure this year they changed it over what I was used to recently. You do get double, or in this case slightly more than double your buy-in if you min cash. So the min cash here was 3,017 and the buy-in was 1,500. So that's good. I didn't like when they were giving people like 2,200 for the min cash. It's kind of crappy for the 1,500 event. So now it's 3,017. But from there it goes up very slowly. and they paid 194 spots out of like 1,287 people. And 194th all the way through like 129th was the same min cash. So a big portion of that were min cashes of the remaining 194. And I think I was 137th. So I was getting pretty close to the next bump up, but the next bump up was like $150 more. I think it was like 3160 something. So, okay. I mean, every little bit counts, I guess, but it's not like I missed a major bump in money. And I think that's good. I think they should disincentivize people stalling into the pay jumps. Sometimes that creates mini bubbles. You don't want this crap. In fact, I've been a proponent of them just raising the amount that people cash by very little each spot, because they can now. Paying the same for various spots in the money is an antiquated concept that doesn't need to be there anymore. This is before it was managed by computer. Now everything's managed by computer. Back when these tournaments were created, nothing was managed by computer. So they had to handle it by hand, and it was too overwhelming for the cashier and for everybody else involved to pay a different amount to every person who cashes the tournament. So that's why they would have pay jumps. But nowadays, it's all managed by the app. The app actually records exactly what you cashed, and then it communicates to the cashier what to pay you. So you go to the payout people, they already know what you're getting. You don't have to give them a card or anything anymore. You just walk up, give them your ID, they say, okay, you're due this much. They already know it. So the computer tells them. So why does it have to be the same for a big group of people that cashes? It really should just very slowly go up, and then you never have a money bubble, because every little bit counts, and it's going to be so small that no one's going to stall to get to the next one. That's my idea, and I remember some people on X supported me when I said that. Others told me this was not a good idea, but I don't agree. But anyway, that's not the way they're doing it, but I will say I do like at least that they are starting with a little bit of a higher initial payout of double the buy-in, and then just leaving it there for a while, and even the initial pay jumps are very small. So it wasn't a big deal that I didn't make the next one. But I did play for quite some time after cashing without getting extra money, which was a little bit weird. That I wasn't used to, where you play that long and then you don't ever get past the min cash. Usually there's a flurry of people going out, and as long as you're not one of them, you're going to bump up a few levels, but I didn't bump up at all. But whatever. I min cashed, and so I was 1 for 1. And, it's always nice to get the first cash out of the way. If you're going to be sitting here playing the whole series, unless you're a complete fish, you're going to cash eventually. But I don't play that many events, and it's very realistic that I could play every event and not cash. But I can say, ever since I started playing the World Series in 2005, that has never occurred to me. The only time I didn't cash that I played World Series events, I'm talking about the only year, was in 2021 when I only played the main. That year, I came really close to cashing the main. I missed it by like 50 spots, which is nothing. But that was the only event I played that year. And I guess 2025 also when I played 2 events. So aside from years where I played 1 or 2 events, I always cashed something, even though often I played fewer than 10 events. And you know how tournaments are. You could easily go 10 events without cashing something, no matter how good you are. So I'm proud of that at least. And I wasn't trying to min cash Alan Kessler style. I was trying to win, of course, but not play recklessly or over aggressively. My idea when I sit down is not, I have to cash, forget making it further, I just can't bust here. My idea is I've got to run deep. I'd like to win this. I'd like to final table this. But it is nice to know I'm not going to go the 26 World Series, especially after missing 25 and fail to cash anything. So right away I got the cash down, and then I just stopped winning hands. So that was my mixed Omaha, which for those of you that don't know, that's a limit Omaha, which is a 4-card game, and it's a limit game. Then there's PLO 8, which is the same game except in pot limit format. And then there's Big O, which is the same game but pot limit and 5-card. And you rotate these every 8 hands. So I really like that event, and now I believe this is my 3rd cash in that event, and I think like 6 tries. I think that's what my record is in this event. So after I busted day 2 of the mixed Omaha on June 2nd, there was another event that I was thinking of playing, also an Omaha event, and I wasn't sure if I was going to play it because if I made day 2, there was a good chance I would miss it. And this was the $600 Deep Stack PLO. Now, I will confess something to you. In all my years in the World Series, I had never played a PLO high event. Strange to think about, and I had it on my schedule various years, but I always would somehow miss it by making day 2 of another event or something I would have to leave town early. Something always happened to where I didn't play the PLO events. But I've wanted to. So finally I got to play a PLO event. But this was one I really did not want to put a lot of time into for the same reason I told you last week when we had the max late reg discussion. Events that are in the mid hundreds, like 500, 600, to me that's not enough money to be worth my time to spend all day on it just to either bust or min cash. And I'm not trying to be arrogant here or anything. Everybody's got a price for their time and where they would feel that something's worth it. And to me, that's not worth it. I'd rather be doing other things. But I also do like the idea of playing these events and also the chance, if I get lucky, to go very deep and then you really do compete for big money. So that's when I realized, hey, I should max late reg these events because I'm not going to cry if I'm out very fast. At least I saved the whole day with playing them. And also, you do start with an edge because a lot of the field is gone in the PLO and no limit events especially because a lot of people bust faster than the split pot events. So I thought I'll probably sit down with a good deal of the field gone, more than the mixed Omaha even. And I just have to survive. I'm not going to try to just survive into the money, but if I do, it won't be that long till I cash. So I thought about that too. I tried it last year with a small buy-in, no limit event, doubled up, but then lost a pot that was destined to have all the money on both sides, and I was on the wrong side of it. So I joined this PLO event literally at the last point I could. That was just the way it worked out with how long I lasted in the mixed Omaha event. So I really did max late reg that one, and I sat with 25K. The blinds at that point were 2,000, 3,000, 3,000. With 3,000 being the big blind ante, so it's 8,000 per round. So I've basically got 3 rounds of chips, which is nothing. And if you're dealt shit hands, that's going to be tough to maneuver. Fortunately, I wasn't dealt total shit hands. I wasn't getting premium hands, but I was getting good enough hands in late position with everybody folding that I was able to raise and get it in there. And, the first time, actually, it's funny. The first time someone open limped, and I was in the blinds, the very first hand. So they open limp, and I guess it wasn't the first hand, but I guess I got to enter with like 2 free hands, which I folded. But anyway, on my big blind, I put my 6K in, so I immediately got only 19K there. And there was a limp, and then I got to see it free. So then the flop is 10-10-4. And I'm thinking, well, there's a good shot they missed this, and they don't know me. So if I just fire out here, they're going to assume, okay, this guy who sits down with a short stack and is just firing out, he's not going to do this if he's got shit, even though I did have shit. So I just fired out 3K, and unfortunately I got a call and a check raised a lot more. That didn't work out. So I let it go. I go, well, shit, I've already wasted a lot of my my chips here, just on this alone. That kind of sucks. But anyway, I was able to spin this up, despite that initial setback. I spun this up to 54, 55K. I think it was 55K, which is almost double of what I started with at the 30. And still, I was short. I had plenty of work to do. Why? Because what percentage of the field was out by the time max late reg was over? What percentage of the field was out by the time I started playing after the max late reg? Would you believe 71%? 71% of the field was gone before I played a hand. So think about it. By virtue of having a warm body and being over 21, I beat 71% of the field before even sitting at the tournament, before even entering the room where the tournament was. Because the tournament was in Horseshoe, and I had previously been in Paris. I had not set foot into the Horseshoe poker room yet, and I had already beaten 71% of the field. That shows you how crazy this max late registration has gotten. Now, of course, if you want to do it, that's fine. It's within the rules. It's a strategy to max late reg, and that's what I did here. Also, I had no choice because I lasted so long in the other event, but 71% was gone already. So I didn't have that long to lead money because it was 85% of the field would have to be out to money, and 71 had already fallen. So we need like half of that field to fall, the remaining field, and you're moneyed at that point, which is crazy. So even though I almost doubled up, then I got dealt king, king, queen, queen with clubs, which is an excellent PLO high hand, as you probably know. So a guy min-raised early. By this point, the blinds had gone up, by the way. It wasn't even 2-3-3 anymore. I forgot what it was. 2-4-4 maybe. He min-raised. I potted it. And then I wasn't happy to see the small blind repotted it. So I figured I was probably against aces, but of course by that point I'm pot committed. And besides, king, king, queen, queen is a very strong hand. So I called it. And he had ace, ace, 9, 7, which is a pretty good hand to run out against a short stack that is going all in pre, because you don't have to post-flop play with the aces. In PLO, aces by themselves without very good cards to go with it, like just 9-7 isn't going to do much for you. But when you don't have to make decisions post-flop, ace, ace, 9-7 is pretty good to run out heads up, obviously, because you're starting with the best hand. So he did have to fade a number of things. I had blockers to him making a straight. I mean, he could make straights, but I had blockers to some of his straights. And I had clubs also, and any king or queen, I beat him provided he doesn't get an ace. So I had a lot of ways to catch him there, but I did not. In fact, very disappointing flop. It was like ace 3-4. So that's the opposite of what I wanted to see, and no clubs. Or I think one club. And then the turn was another 4. So that was that. I was drawing dead. And didn't even bother to look at the river card. So I was out, and that was that. So, okay, that's the way it goes. I wasn't even mad. It's when you're trying to chip up there, and when you're short, and you get king, king, queen, queen with a suited in there, that's a pretty good hand to go in with, especially with only one guy who's initially raising. So it's not like I can automatically put someone on aces. It was small blind who woke up with the aces. So whatever, that's the way it goes. But those were my two events, and one worked out with a late reg and one did not. Just the way the cards fell. So I still did not get very much play in a World Series PLO event. I got a little play, but very little. And I did see that some of these players are not very good at PLO. Like I saw this in my short time there. There were some people who really were not very good at the game. So I look forward to my next PLO World Series event. And I'm not like a great PLO player, so I wouldn't want to enter one of these upper buy-in PLO events where you're against these PLO crushers who are way better than me. But as far as like the average player entering one of these $600 events at PLO, there's a lot of fish in that. Even people who aren't like outright terrible, but I see a lot of stupid mistakes. I even saw that in the short time I was there. So I look forward to the next time I get a chance to, and maybe I'll get a bit longer. Those are my two events, and I'm really not going to be playing much No Limit Hold'em prior to the main. In fact, I'm not going to be playing much Hold'em at all. And in fact, even in cash, I played Omaha. I played cash that night too. So I haven't done any Hold'em play yet, and I'm not going to be doing Hold'em play tomorrow, and I'm not going to be doing any Hold'em play the next day. And I'm going to see if I can enter the monster stack, but I don't even know if I'm going to have time to enter that because I may be doing other events that conflict with it. And then I'll be playing the seniors event, obviously. But I'm not going to be playing that much as far as No Limit Hold'em, and there's only one Limit Hold'em event I'm playing this year. People keep asking me about the 10K. I'm not playing the 10K. And people ask, why wouldn't you play the 10K? The 10K has a smaller field, easier to win a bracelet that way. I've commented before that not everybody in that event is great at Limit Hold'em, which is true. And it's just too much variance. It's a 10K event. It's $10,000 to enter a tournament. And those events also, which are smaller fields, you have to win a lot of hands to make the money. The bigger the size of the field, the greater chance there is that you can min cash despite getting unspectacular cards. So you can get very mediocre cards. You can get pretty much bad cards where you're just not taking beats in large pots or ending up in coolers or whatever it might be. as long as you're not getting in situations like that and you're making at least a few hands, you can kind of stretch this out into cashing in big fields. But in small fields, you can't do that. In small fields, you have to win a lot of hands, especially in limit. And the problem is with limit hold'em, that becomes very card dependent. Because you can't do large bet bluffs there, you really have to just make hands. And if you're just not making hands, you're going to lose. And as much as I like limit hold'em in the cash format, in the tournament format, a lot of it is very card dependent. And if I'm putting 10K into it and having to count on the cards to fall the right way for me, I just don't like that. It's like too much money. So that's why I haven't been entering it. Also, if you get a bad table draw in that one, it can be really tough. I've gotten some table draws there where I can't believe it's a 10K event. Everybody's a fish. And I've gotten some just absolutely crusher table draws where everybody at the table is either a limit hold'em all-star that I know from playing on PokerStars in the past or from Commerce or wherever, or has a bracelet or multiple bracelets in limit games. So that's not who you want at your table. I've had where everybody at the table has at least one bracelet in a limit game. So that's not a good thing to see. So anyway, I play the 1500 still. The 3K has been eliminated this year. So there's only that and the 10K. So I'm just going to play the 1500 limit hold'em, and that's it. And really, most of my preliminary events are going to be Omaha events, which is different from the past. And, of course, the main event, which has really become my favorite event at the World Series of Poker. I really like the main event, and I think my style works well for it, and I think my results for the last several years has shown that, where I've run deep 3 times out of the last 6, and then I also almost cashed a 4th time there in that stretch of the last 6 mains I've played. So I've made just before the money or later in 4 of the last 6 I've played, and I've made it way past the money in 3 of the last 6 I played. So I think that should speak for itself, unless you think I'm just getting insanely lucky. So I really like the format of that. I think I have a good strategy in how to be successful in it that I've developed over time. So I was sad to miss it last year. I didn't brick it last year. I just couldn't play. If you do want to follow my progress, just follow Druff Poker on X, and I will post updates for every event I play. I got a text from a listener, and I always say listeners can text me if they want to say things that are positive or if they want to say things that are negative. Just be respectful. But you're welcome to disagree with me. You're welcome to try to correct me if you think I said something wrong. Maybe you will correct me. Maybe I'll concede that I was wrong about something if I look it up. I've had that happen before, too. You have constructive criticism about the show, feel free to text me. So this guy from 619, he believes that I'm wrong about the situation with Max Late Reg. Either that or he thinks I'm a fish. One of these two. This is what he texted me. Would you like to put your money where your mouth is on Max Late registration at the World Series being a plus EV endeavor? I would love to cross-book against you for whatever you'd like to wager. We could, of course, escrow the funds, and I would hope for at least a 10-tournament minimum. Let's see how eager you are for the obvious plus EV opportunity that you keep talking about. First of all, I don't want to be results-oriented here, but he actually would be losing this bet so far. Because so far, I have profited $1,517 from the first late registration, and I lost $600 for the second. So I'm up $917, which isn't a ton of money, but so far I am ahead on that. But putting that aside, he's basically saying if I'm so confident that max late regging is positive expectation, that he's willing to bet me that if I'm up in max late registration overall, that he will pay me that equivalent amount. And if I'm down, I will pay him that equivalent amount. That's called cross-booking. So did I say yes to this? Well, there's a big problem. He says we could escrow, but how much would we escrow? Because I don't know this guy. And the problem is I know exactly the amount I could lose. And that would be all my buy-ins combined that I'm doing the max late regging. Because that's the most I can be down. That's one good thing with tournaments is you can't lose an unlimited sum of money. You can only lose whatever you're buying in. So I know what I can lose, and it's not going to be big money. Therefore, he knows he can trust me to pay him. Not only do I have a good reputation for this sort of thing, but he also knows that the money won't be that big to where I would ever throw away my reputation for that kind of money. So, like, for example, he doesn't have to worry about me stiffing him for $3 million and saying, well, screw my reputation, it's worth keeping the $3 million. He doesn't have to worry about that because he knows the amount I can lose here wouldn't be high enough to where I would ever stiff him. That my rep, ruining my good rep for all this time of being an honest person who doesn't ever stiff anybody, there's no chance I would do that for the amount that I would lose here at worst. But on his side, I don't know who he is. I don't know if he has any kind of reputation in poker. And he could potentially be out a lot of money if I were to win. If I were to win any of these events outright, or maybe even finish second. You know, we could be talking about 6 figures, or maybe even some cases 7 figures. Now, yes, it's not likely, but it can happen. So what is he going to escrow? Like, let's say we did this. Would he actually go and escrow
$1 million?
I don't believe he would. I don't believe he's going to put that type of money on escrow. And you may say, well, come on, that's probably not going to happen. Well, what if it does, though? That's like part of the bet, that he's cross-booking and betting that I won't be profitable doing this. And yes, if we're looking only at small money, then maybe he would have the edge here, because I'm not going to cash more often than I'm going to cash. I'm not going to say I'm going to cash half the time or more. So if we were to only bet on will I cash more often than I don't cash, then he would likely win. But where some of my value would come in would be the times, rare times, but still the times that I go from max late regging to very deep and cash something fairly big. So that's the problem. I don't think he would ever escrow the amount of money that I would feel comfortable making this bet. Now, if he really wants to escrow something that, for example, would be the largest payout that I would get for winning in the events I'm entering. You know, he wouldn't have to do it for every event because I'm not going to win every event. I don't think I would win 2 events. So I won't make him go as far as that. But would he really escrow the largest amount I can win in any single event? I don't think so. And if he doesn't, then how do I know he'll pay me? How do I know he won't just fly the coop if he finds out that he owes me $1 million because I get lucky and win one of these big field events that I'm entering late? So that's why I won't do it. If it was someone I knew for sure would pay, then I would do it. Or if he said, okay, I really will escrow $1 million, okay, I would do it. The other reason I may not do it is because I would be then committed to enter 10 events like he wants with max late registration. And I don't want to do that because, as I said last week, I enjoy playing these World Series events. I don't want to just go into all of them super late and keep busting in 5 minutes. So I like the play. So that's why I have been foregoing the max late registration in most events. The Mixed Omaha, where I registered so late, that wasn't intentional. That was because I overslept. The PLO, I was going to late register anyway. Turned out I had no choice, but even if I had a choice, I would have registered very late for that too. So that one, I would say, is by choice. But the first one was not. And for example, the PLO 8 event that I'm about to play, I don't want to max late reg that one either, even if it is an advantage, because I enjoy playing the event. So I would have to cook out all the fun I have of playing the World Series to do this bet. That's the other problem. But if he doesn't agree with me, he can take a look at X, and most of the pros now have come around to say that this is an advantage. And in fact, they may change the policy with max late regging in the near future because of this, because people are coming around to the way I've said it was all along. Not because of me, but they've just come around to my same thinking. Kind of reminds me of in 1990, of course this has nothing to do with poker, but in 1990, when I was in college, I identified myself as a free speech Republican, a free speech conservative. And many conservatives I knew were not free speech believers. The people who were big believers of free speech back in 1990 were liberals. That was one of the issues where I agreed with the liberals. And I had a lot of conservatives at that time telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, telling me all the reasons there shouldn't be free speech. And then it evolved over time. And look where we are today, that Republicans, conservatives, are the ones who are mostly pushing for free speech, and the people on the left are coming up with reasons to censor speech. I know there's still some people who are liberals that still want free speech, and those people I respect, even though we disagree on some other things. But what I'm saying is I was ahead of my time, where I didn't cause the conservative shift to supporting free speech. Obviously, I had nothing to do with it, but it just kind of caught up with my original thinking in the first place, which was nice to see, because I always felt that it didn't make any sense. Something I always broke with my own party on, and then eventually it caught up, and I wasn't breaking with my own party anymore. They changed, and I stayed the same. So anyway, it's kind of like that with the max late registration. I had people before telling me that I was crazy to say it was an advantage, and now they're saying, hey, yeah, this is an advantage, we need to stop it. So just wanted to put that out there for the guy who wanted to do the cross-booking. And if he has an idea how we can do this differently to where it's fair to me, then fine. But the last thing I'd want to do is have this bet, then get very lucky, win an event for $700,000 and have him not want to pay me, or find out he can't pay me because he just doesn't have the money, and I have to sue him and try to collect from him. There's no fucking way I want to get involved with that stuff. So it would have to be like an escrow that's very large on his end. Obviously not mine, because the most I could lose is fairly small, and I'd be glad to escrow that amount too. But that's the problem with making that bet with a stranger. Okay, let me move on here. I can't believe I spent 45 minutes talking about stuff the World Series having to do with me. I've really been not very efficient tonight. Interesting hand went down involving Isildur. Remember Isildur, Viktor Blom? He burst onto the online poker scene in the late 2000s and was crushing it. In fact, he was beating Tom Dwan pretty badly online. It was kind of weird seeing Dur being taken down by Isildur. People first thought that maybe that was a play on Dur's name, but Isildur is actually a character from Lord of the Rings. But Isildur, who kept his identity secret for a while, in fact was even a PokerStars-sponsored pro while not being identified, finally came forward and was identified as European pro Viktor Blom, who was young at the time. I think he was 21 at the time. Now he's no longer that young. He is 36, I believe. And you hadn't heard that much about him recently compared to before, but he is still playing. But he got involved in a very interesting hand that I want to talk about. And when I talk about hands on this show, I like to stick to things that I think all of you will find interesting. And this one I think definitely qualifies. So before I play it to you, let me explain what some people do when they're caught bluffing on the river. Let's say you make a bluff on the river, you make a bluff bet, and then somebody calls your bet. Well, if you know there's no chance your hand can win at this point, let's say you have 6 high, and you bluff the river and you get called. You may not want to show down your 6 high. You may not want to turn over your cards and show what you had. So basically the rules in poker state, if you're the bettor and then someone calls you on the river, you have to do what's called show or muck. That is, you either have to turn over your hand and see if it can beat the opponent's hand, who has to turn over theirs or muck it, or you can just muck it because you know you've lost, at which point you're conceding the hand. The reason some people muck instead of showing is because if they know they have no shot at winning the hand, then they are preserving the information of what they were doing. So this way their opponent doesn't exactly know what kind of bluff they were making. They don't know if it's a busted draw. They don't know if it's a pure bluff. They don't know what it is, and it'll be a mystery to them. So that's the reason some people muck instead of showing. So as I said, if you have 6 high at the end, there's no point to show. Then just mucking is reasonable. Where it's not reasonable is if your hand has any kind of showdown value, and where it's possible, even if it's not that likely, that somebody called you with worse. So you may be embarrassed to turn it over at that point, or you may not want them to see what you were doing exactly. But if you have any kind of showdown value, you are foolish to just muck it. In the 2000s, Roland de Wolf, who was a British poker pro, he did a lot of this bluffing on the river mucking, and the German players that were facing him a lot in tournaments caught on to this. And they discussed with each other, you know what, we should do something to Roland to exploit this. So what some of the Germans were doing then was, if Roland would bet into them on the river, sometimes they would call with absolutely nothing, hands that can't possibly win on Showdown, because Roland may muck it. And there was a infamous televised hand, I think from the late 2000s, where Roland did make a big river bet, was called by a poker pro who was aware of what Roland did, and this guy had no hand either. He had a worse hand than Roland, and then Roland mucked it. He got away with it. The plan worked. So we haven't seen that for a while, but now this has happened with Isildur, and unlike Roland DeWolf, who had hands that didn't really have showdown value at all, but his opponents were just calling him, hoping he just mucks. In this case, Isildur actually mucked something with showdown value. Listen to this. And this is from event number 11, the GG Millions event, which is a $10,000 buy-in, no-limit hold'em event. And you may say, hey, isn't that the main event? Well, the GG Millions is an earlier event that has a much smaller field than the main and attracts a lot more pros than the main event, which is very amateur-heavy. So this is something GG Poker has brought over to the World Series. They own it now. So the GG Millions is going on, and Viktor Blom was involved in a hand, which was quite interesting. Listen to this.
Back to table Curly as Rick Meshamel must be a little bored, raising King 9 suited under the gun +2. Viktor Blom with Ace 8 of spades.
So it's King 9 suited against Ace 8 of spades. Viktor Blom called with the Ace 8 of spades to the King 9 suited raise. So the flop is Queen 6-7.
7-6.
With 2 hearts, so it's missed both of them. It's Ace 8 of spades, King 9 of diamonds. Queen 6-7 with 1 diamond.
Misses everyone.
Yeah, not the greatest board for either player. I suppose Meshamel's got a little bit more of a backdoor piece. But still not going to fall through a bet. Well, I'm just leaning in here with Ace 8.
So Blom, he just fires out here, assuming that Queen 6-7 probably missed this under the gun +2 raiser. There's a lot of hands which are going to feel uncomfortable with a Queen 6-7 flop when it's heads up. So that's not a bad bet. So then this opponent, Meshamel, who I don't really know, he has to think about what to do.
Expecting a lot of check folds.
This is one of those multiple backdoor situations, right, Randy, with King 9 of diamonds?
That's right. That's why he's still continuing.
Diamonds, Broadway, number cards. Not that, though.
So now there's 3 hearts, Queen 7-6-7. So pair of 7 to the board and 3 hearts. So you got to think, if you're Meshamel, you're just going to check fold here, because you'll think, okay, what am I possibly beating? And there's a lot that's leaving me drawing dead, so screw it. This is just one of the spots that you have to just let it go.
Also not a good card for Blom to fire again. You know, hands that were a little weak, they pick up.
So he's saying, I'm not sure who this commentator is, it's not a good spot for Blom to fire again. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if you're firing and the board's Queen 6-7 with 2 hearts and a 7 of hearts hits the turn, then there's 2 things now that could have greatly improved your hand. If you had a 7 before, now you've got trips, and if you had hearts before, you now have a flush. So there's a lot of things there that are going to scare your opponent, that your betting telling a story is going to tell the story, now you've really hit big. And it's time to give up, even if they've got an okay hand. Even if they got like jacks or 10s, they may just give up. So let's hear what happens.
A heart draw, that's probably not going to fold to double barrel.
So it was check. Now you may wonder, why didn't Blom continue? Blom probably decided that he doesn't want to continue and then get a call from a better hand that has a heart in the hand too. Like, say, pocket 10s with a 10 of hearts is going to call there. Pocket jacks with a jack of hearts is going to call there. Ace jack with either heart is going to call there. So Blom is like, there's too many hands that are beating mine. They're going to call there, and then I have to decide what to do on the river. Maybe I don't want to waste that many chips, and then get called down anyway, so he just checked behind.
Would like to see Meshamel go for a bluff now with King 9. Can pull out random ace highs, but this is good for Blom. Blom's actually turning his hand into a bluff.
Blom, by the way, it appears he called in late position, so it appears that Meshamel's had to been out of position the entire way. He's just been check calling the flop and check on the turn, and now he checks the river, and Blom bets on the river. And here's the crucial part.
48,000 from Blom.
Well, I'm saying he's got a queen as played, trying to fold out ace high, 8s, 9s, 10s, and jacks would actually have a lot of trouble calling, because it's actually quite credible for Blom to bet flop of a queen and see the dangerous turn and check back, and once you get checked to again on the river, you would go for value. If you're
So Blom basically bet half the pot on the river to make the pot 132K total. And they're saying there that Blom's line of betting the flop when check to and then checking back on the turn that both could have made a flush and trips for his opponent, and then betting when check to on the river is a very reasonable line. So this will probably get Meshamel to realize that he has no shot with a king high here and should probably fold.
Queen. Oh my goodness, he just called with king high. Oh my god,
and Blom
he mucks! No. Oh my goodness.
Right, okay. The graphic did award Blom the pot, but he mucked his hand.
So the graphic that was showing the action here actually showed, and then they quickly took it off the screen, it actually showed that Blom got the pot. And the reason that's funny is because Blom bet the river and got called and then mucked his hand, which means the worst hand got the pot. So he bet with ace high, got called by king high, like snap called. And of course then Blom threw his hand away without showing it. So had he shown the hand, he would have been awarded the pot, but he didn't show his hand. He actually mucked his ace high, so it got pushed to Meshamel, who never had to even show his hand. Now, there were two big reasons why this was stupid on the part of Viktor Blom. Number one, if you've got a hand with showdown value, you always show it. Ace high definitely has showdown value, especially with the way this ran out. It ran out with a 3 on the river. I forgot to tell you, 3 of spades, meaningless river. Okay? So it's queen, 7, 6, 7, 3 with 3 hearts on it. So you don't love your ace 8 high there, but also the way the hand played out, including the pre-flop flat that Blom did, it's very possible that Blom could have been bluffing with a hand that didn't make it. You know, busted straight draw, or just many other hands that could have called that were worse than King 9 that he was firing away with. So it's very reasonable for Blom to turn over the ace 8 thinking there's a chance it could be good, even though he got called. You don't feel good about it when you bet that river for half the pot and get called. You think your ace 8 is probably dead. You think you're probably being called by a pocket pair or something. But you still turn it over because there's the chance you're being called with king high. And he was. He was called with king high. So he actually mucked it and robbed himself of the chance of winning that pot. Number two, you're not hiding any information by doing this in this particular case because it's a streamed event. So Blom can't even say, well, he'll never know what I had, so it's worth it to me to just muck it, and if he happens to have king high, so be it. I don't think he does, so I'll just take my chance. There's a very small chance that I mucked the winner, but whatever, I'd rather not have him see what I was doing over here. Well, but people will see because this is being streamed. Now it's on a delay of whatever time it is. I'm not sure how long the delay is for these broadcasts, but eventually it'll be communicated over to Meshamel, like during a break, what Blom had. So the secret's not even going to last very long. So what's the point? Why would you ever muck your hand on a stream where people see what your hand is? So any embarrassment you're going to get from what hand you were holding, you're not preventing that. And anything your opponent will find out, or other opponents at the table will find out, is useless because pretty soon that'll also be known by those watching the stream and communicating with it with others at the table. Even if you're not allowed to use your phone at the table, soon enough they're going to find it out. So what was the point? I don't understand. There's a big, big mistake on the part of Blom, and people can't believe it. And a lot of people were talking about this on social media, and no one was defending Blom here. And in fact, those old Roland DeWolf hands were being brought up again after all these years. So in case you're one of those people who bluffs and then just mucks it when called, don't ever muck it unless you really have something with no showdown value. And I really mean no showdown value. Even something with tiny showdown value you should still table. Like, let's say you do it with queen high and get called. Well, there are sometimes people who call with jack high. Remember Alex Powers? He called me with jack high. He called me with jack high. I think he actually got called by queen high or king high, but he thought it was jack high. He actually ran out of the tournament room. Had to tell his friends about the call with jack high and just let himself get blinded off while he's talking about that, even though he won the hand. Alex Powers died a number of years ago, by the way. Anyway, you never muck a hand with showdown value. You always show it, even if you don't want people to see it, especially if you're on a stream. Now, I have a story that beats this one from Cash from the 2000s. I was at a 61-20 game at Commerce, a very, very wild game. Every pot was pumped up huge. There were multiple fish in the game who were very aggressive and would keep raising with not very strong hands, sometimes complete crap. A lot of variance in that game, as you can imagine. So this very, very big pot got developed, and by the end on the river, it was one fish against another. And on the river, there was a single bet by one of the fish, and then the other fish snap called him, and the first guy mucked his hand. So the pot was pushed over to the second fish, who got a gigantic pot without having to show down his hand. So people asked him, hey, what do you have? He didn't have to show it at that point. He could just muck at that point because he had already been awarded the pot. He didn't have to show his cards then. But people were asking, hey, what do you have? Come on, show it. And he was embarrassed. He's like, no, I don't want to show it. Like, come on, show it. So finally, he showed his hand, and he said straight, and showed people that he thought he made a straight. And the reason I say thought he made a straight was that it turned out he misread the board and actually had 6 high. Yes. He accidentally called with 6 high, thinking it was a straight, and the reason he didn't raise is because I think the board had 3 of one suit on there, and it was paired. I think the board was something like 3, 4, 7, 4 ace, something like that. I think he had 6-2. I remember he had 6-2 for sure, but I think the board was something like 3, 4, 7, 4 ace with 3 of one suit. So he thought his 6-2 made a straight. The ace confused him. The ace made him think that he made some kind of straight with what he had, and it didn't help him, of course. So he really had 6 high. He was confused. He called. The other guy mucked. But he actually showed us the 6 deuce. So then the first guy said that he had, I think it was 8 high or 9 high, and that's why he mucked it. And he was very annoyed, because he would have won. He would have won. Imagine betting with like 8 or 9 high and getting called and winning. That would have happened there. But instead, 6 high called a bet and won. It was crazy. I could not believe when the guy who called the bet, the other mucked, and then showed 6 deuce offsuit for 6 high. Accidental, but still, that's what happened. And when that happened, I even remember thinking, hey, you know what? That's kind of a thing to do, maybe. This is before I heard about what they were doing to Roland DeWolf. I thought, hey, that's maybe something I should do. When someone who bets a lot on the river and then mucks when called, maybe I should just call with anything, because a certain percentage of the time, they're just going to muck even if I can't beat them. Maybe I should call my busted straight draw with 9 high, or my busted flush draw with 6 high. Maybe I should do it because they're going to muck. I never actually did it. I won't take credit for that. But I thought maybe I should. So that was an interesting hand. I bet Isildur is never going to make that mistake again. Very stupid. But guess what? I have another story, a more recent story. Even though this was a fairly recent thing that happened with Isildur, this happened either in the early morning of June 3rd or late at night, June 2nd. So only a little bit more than 24 hours ago. But we have something even more recent from the same event, from the GG Millions. And that is something more controversial. See, the Isildur thing wasn't controversial. It was just him being stupid. This one did not involve any players being stupid, but it involved something controversial occurring that has gotten a lot of people talking. And it was due to a dealer error. A player named Ricky Landais, who I hadn't heard of before. He is a black guy. I really don't know who he is. I see he's played a number of tournaments over the last 8 years. I don't know if he's a pro player or not. He has like $283,000 worth of cashes, so he's not a new player or someone who's never cashed before, but he has never cashed more than 45K. And he was playing the GG Millions, which has a 10K buy-in and a minimum $1 million first prize, and it's going to be paying almost $1.1 million this year. So that would have been, I assume, life-changing money for Mr. Landais. And he was down to the final 22, so I'm sure this is very exciting for him to have made it this deep and have a shot at $1.1 million. He was up against Bobby James, who is a British poker pro. I've talked a little bit with Bobby James on X. In fact, he had mentioned that when I see him around the series to come say hi to him. So I like Bobby James. I don't really know him that well, but we've communicated some on X. And nothing against him here. He didn't do anything wrong. But unfortunately, Ricky Landais really got screwed in a hand against Bobby James, which ended up knocking him out of the tournament when he should not have been knocked out. This is due to a dealer error and a rule which I think is the correct rule, but shouldn't be the correct rule. That was enforced the way they're enforcing it currently, and I think they should change it. But anyway, let me play to you what happened, and I'll describe it. This is just something that happened tonight, so this is really breaking news. This just happened on June 3rd in the evening at the GG Millions event with just 22 people left. And Ricky Landais was short-stacked. He went all in with ace-king, and he got called by Bobby James, who has a pretty good stack at the time, with ace-9. So right away, Landais is in good shape to double up. But, you know, you get 3 outed a lot in these situations. You're the favorite, but you can't count the money just yet. So let's listen to what happened.
That's good karma right there to say, yeah, I'm fine with the chop. I just want to stay in this tournament.
He really wants to scoop.
Okay, so ignore the commentary there. The important thing, which I'm going to have to describe to you because this is an audio show, was that the flop came 6 king 5 4. You heard me right. The flop came 6 king 5 4. And you say, wait a minute, that's not a flop. That's the flop and the turn. And I say, no, that was the flop. 6 king 5 4. Now, how's that possible? How is it a 4-card flop when the flop's supposed to be 3 cards? Well, that's what everybody wanted to know. It turned out it was a dealer mistake that 4 cards were flopped. So obviously, something has to be done at that point. Which of these cards stand as the flop? Which one do you take away? Or do you re-deal the whole flop? What do you do when this happens? It appeared that the 6 was supposed to be the burn card. So, of course, for the few of you who don't know, before they deal the flop, they deal out 1 card face down that ends up not having to do with the hand, and then the next 3 cards they put out for the flop. So the 6 should have been the burn card, and the flop should have been the other 3, which would have been king 5 4. That's what appears to have been the case. The dealer just either forgot to burn, or somehow the burn card got caught up in there and ended up being turned over as well. So there's a 4-card flop. Now, what do you do at that point? It's a good question. Well, listen to what happened once this was realized with the 4-card flop.
It's not greedy.
It's okay to want.
Oh boy, this is very awkward.
This is very awkward.
They'll redo the whole thing. They will, because this is what happened.
Oh, man.
Okay. They redo the whole thing, as far as I know. What?
Now remember, with this flop here, Landais is sitting pretty, provided the king is supposed to be there. Because if you have ace-king against ace-9, and the board is king, low card. The ace-9's in tremendous trouble. The ace-9 can only win if it goes 9-9, which, of course, is highly unlikely. So he's almost drawing dead at this point, his opponent. So he should be sitting pretty to double, to almost certainly double. But hold on a second. Are they going to keep this flop?
This is really bad. This is a bad omen for Landais.
Yeah. I wonder
Let's hear the
So the
ruling.
floor man comes over to rule on this.
Mistakes happen, by the way. Part of the game.
The prime viewing.
I mean, I think the six would have been. The six would have been.
Did we shuffle them all back in, or did we use the old rule? I don't remember which one.
Wait, you're asking us?
What? Is he asking the players?
I would probably ask Andy. Yeah.
I mean, he's right. The high rollers do typically know how things work.
You might as well
Let's just redo it.
don't touch it. Just wait. Don't touch it. Because Andy will come over and we'll get an actual decision.
I believe if this won't be your decision is correct. The 6 of diamonds would have been the burn card. All right,
That's one of the players talking, by the way.
But that's not how they're going to rule it.
So the players talking among themselves how they think this is going to be ruled with a 4-card flop.
Well, this is a crazy option I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, they stayed in the exact same place. This one's the king of diamonds. This one's the 5 of diamonds.
Wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, in some situations we change this to burn.
That's the burn.
In some situations we shuffle it all back in immediately, but they're different now because that's new.
Oh, that's a big sweat now.
Oh, if that's the king in the hole, it's unfucking lucky. Oh my god.
So they're gonna.
So the solution they came up with here was that the floor man would mix up the 4 cards that came on the flop and pick the 1 card to take out. It was going to be random, but this left him in danger that the king would disappear, and then he would not have his opponent drawing almost dead anymore. So he made the choice, and of course, he ended up picking the king. Let's listen to that.
I mean, it's not too bad.
Oh my goodness, no!
Could have been worse.
Yeah, at least it wasn't like the
One
king of
diamond
diamonds.
is
Yeah.
like the 4 would.
The 4 would have been horrible.
Right, now you just feel regular.
This is a real sweat.
So it's 4, 5, 6 on the board. They're trying to make him feel better that, I don't know what they're trying to say. The 4 would have been horrible. Why would the 4 have been horrible? He has his king. He lost his king. What are they talking about? That's the very worst card to go out. I don't know what they're trying to say.
It just does not seem right. Oh, here comes the 7.
my goodness.
So now an 8 on the turn makes it even worse for him. Because at least on that flop, even though they took away the worst card for him, the king that left his opponent drawing almost dead, at least there, he still was ahead, and his opponent was still drawing to 3 outs, which is the 3 remaining 9s. But now they put an 8 on the turn. That gave his opponent now 4 more outs, because any 7 will make a straight for him. So he went from having 3 outs to 7 outs with 1 card to come. So Landais has to fade a 7 or a 9 to win the hand.
Don't do it to him.
Joke, Max. That's a joke.
This would be pretty brutal.
9 of clubs, I guess. Whatever.
7 of clubs.
No. No, this is not right. This is not right.
Yeah, 7 of clubs. A straight is made by Bobby James, and that is the end of Ricky Landais. Is that awful or what? You're dealt the freaking king, leaving your opponent drawing almost dead, and then you lose the king because of a dealer error, and then he makes a running straight on you. How awful is that? So people are describing this as the worst beat ever in poker. Even the official WSOP account tweeted, taking running bad to the next level. So some people believe this is the unluckiest loss that anyone has ever had of a hand at the World Series, and I think I agree. Because it's not just the way the hands run out. It's the fact that he had the hand basically won, and through a dealer error lost the card that put him in that position, and then, despite still being a good favorite to win at that point, then lost anyway. That's really bad. Now, he took it well. He stood up, and he left the same way anybody else would leave after busting in this spot, without this type of situation. Just, kind of just stood up and calmly left. A lot of people would not do that. A lot of people would really be pissed and be crying bloody murder here. But he kind of just stood up and left.
Is one of the worst things that I have ever seen.
So bad.
That's so gross.
This was.
Would have been.
It's projectile
It
vomit.
would have been a straight.
I mean, look,
It's
it's poker, things happen, things are randomized, but that was
Is that
ugly.
And I know you may have heard in the background one of the people, I don't know who it was at the table, saying it would have still been a straight. No, it wouldn't have, because for it to be a straight, remember, he only had the 9. So for this to end up a straight, there would have had to be 6, 5, 7, 8 on the board. The 4 didn't matter. So the point is here that if the 6 really was the burn card, then there could not have been a straight. If it was, as people assumed, that the actual flop should have been King 5-4, there was no way to win with a straight at that point for Bobby James. And again, nothing wrong for Bobby James here. He didn't do any of this. He was just there holding the ace-9 and happened to win this way. But if the flop was King 5-4, then the only way that Bobby James knocks him out is with running 9s, which was highly unlikely to happen and didn't happen. So then the 8-7 would not have mattered. Now, I will say that if it turned out the 4 was the burn card and it was just flopped backwards, let's say the dealer just flopped them out backwards and the 4 was the burn card, then yes, it still would have ended up just a bad beat straight. It would have been a runner-runner straight, which would have been a very bad beat, but this would not have been controversial. It's just one of those things where a player is very unlucky. But I don't think it was the 4. Some other people are saying that they think maybe the king could have been the burn card. That it was most likely the 6, but maybe it was the king, and because that was the second card out. And maybe somehow they got stuck together and switched in the process. But I don't think so. I think the most likely burn card was the 6. The second most likely burn card was the 4. I would think the right thing to do at that point would be to look at the cameras and try to analyze this as well as possible and try to figure out which are the 2 safe cards. And then maybe put the other 2 cards back in, reshuffle, and then deal the last card for the flop. There's no perfect solution here, but I think that's probably the most fair one. But it turns out that the TDA, which basically publishes a set of standardized rules for tournaments, and Matt Savage, I believe, is in charge of the TDA. And it's been in existence for a long time, and they meet every year. This is going to be the 25th year they meet at the end of June to discuss changes to the standardized rules for tournaments. Now, tournaments are not required to follow TDA rules. They can do what they want, but it's kind of sets a standard for tournament directors to use as far as setting rules. So Matt Savage shared the TDA rule on this because there actually is a pre-existing rule. And the rule there says 4-card flops. If a flop has 4 rather than 3 cards, exposed or not, and regardless of whether the door card is presumed known, the floor will be called. The dealer then scrambles the 4 cards face down. The floor randomly selects 1 as the next burn card, and the other 3 are the flop. So maybe it was the floor who picked it. I thought it was going to be Ricky. I couldn't tell from the video. But it doesn't really matter who picks it. But yeah, it looks like they made the right ruling according to that. Now, I don't know if the World Series of Poker follows the TDA rules for this, but at least this makes it defensible that they followed the TDA procedure. So at first I thought they were wrong, and a lot of other people on X thought this was the total wrong ruling. But if that's what the TDA has established and the World Series hasn't really thought of it before, and they're just following the TDA, that makes sense. Then I don't really blame them. So it really depends what the printed rule is, which I don't know if they even have one, and if they don't, it does make sense that they would default to what the TDA says. But I do think they should change this. I think they need to look at this again and modify the rule, and I really think the new rule should be that the best attempt should be made to figure out what the flop actually should have been and what was supposed to be the burn card, and that they should try to salvage as many cards of the flop that they can from whatever information they have, including video information. And then from there, anything that's unknown should be shuffled back into the deck, and then the rest of the flop should be dealt. Something like that. Because to have to just pick randomly one of the 4 cards could just alter the hand so much. I just don't think that's the right way to do it, especially if it's clear or semi-clear that 2 of the cards probably should have been there, no matter what. Now let me give you Ricky Landais' comments on social media, because remember, he left quietly, and he was actually much less frustrated looking than I would expect. I would be a lot more pissed after this than he looked. But he was pissed. He just didn't display it at the time. But this is what he posted on Facebook. I'm as competitive as they come. Today's loss just doesn't sit right with me. Imagine buying into the biggest tournament of your life, taking a shot, grinding days, and experiencing a dream. Today's result has really left me feeling not okay with the game and the World Series of Poker. I received a ruling that was not only idiotic, but senseless. I grinded over an hour today with less than 10 big blinds. I find a dream spot with 6 big blinds, ace-king against ace-9. Great chance to double. Dealer puts out a flop containing a king, essentially flopping him dead. Dealer accidentally puts out 4 flop cards. The floor is called and has no idea what the ruling is, but ultimately decided to put all 4 flop cards together and shuffle, then blindly pick 1 to 4 cards that would be the burn. To my luck, the king was selected and my dream was shattered as my opponent went runner straight. World Series of Poker, this may seem like a small mistake, but to me this was $1 million mistake. I win the hand as I was supposed to, and I'm now at 12 big blinds. This is painful. I'm angered. To grind and be eliminated like this is sad. Well, I agree, it is sad. And he's basically saying that had he won the hand like he should have, he would have 12 big blinds, which isn't a lot of blinds, obviously. That's still short-stacked, but that he would have had more of a fighting chance at that point to keep surviving instead of busting. And that he's really pissed that this is the way he went out when he really should have doubled there. And I agree. So, very unfortunate situation. He got screwed there, and they should really look again at this rule. In the meantime, since the whole thing's done, as far as Ricky Landais' time in the tournament, they can't bring him back to the tournament, so his tournament is over in 22nd place. So what should they do for him, if anything? What I think is they should give him something like a main event seat for free. Why? Because this was a very unusual situation. This wasn't just a small error was made. This wasn't a case where a misdeal happens, and had the misdeal not occurred, that someone would have been dealt aces or something like that, or a dealer accidentally drops the deck in between the turn and the river or something. They have to reshuffle the whole thing, and it changes everything. Things like that, okay, they can be frustrating, but this one was especially brutal because the flop was already out there. The king was one of the middle cards there, so it wasn't likely that was supposed to be the burn card. He should have had his opponent drawing dead, and then he had to watch it as that king was taken away, and then he took a bad beat on top of it. It was such a unfortunate mistake. I know the dealer didn't mean it, and these things can happen. People are human, as they said in the broadcast, but I would think since this was dealer error, and then a policy which is kind of questionable, even if it is in the TDA, just it's one that they need to look at again. And even Matt Savage seemed to concede that in his tweet that they're going to be looking at it again at the TDA summit, which is what they call it at the end of the month. I would think this would be just a nice thing to do. They don't have to establish it as precedent. They don't have to say, well, every time a dealer makes a mistake that affects a player, we're going to give them a main event seat. But in this spot, they can say, because this was such a major spot, because of the terrible way this came down, we're going to, as a one-time exception, we're going to give Ricky Landais a free main event seat to make up a little bit for what happened. That he got his dream crushed here because of a very unfortunate situation, so maybe he can make a new dream at the main event on us. That would be very good PR. And that would not require them to do this in every situation that comes up in the future. But I think most people would support it and applaud them for it instead of sitting there talking about how he got screwed, especially because this rule is kind of a weird rule. So a lot of people will be leaving this with a bad taste in their mouth that you can get screwed at the World Series and then a bad ruling will be made, even if it wasn't a bad ruling. But it appears to be a bad ruling to the average person watching, even people who are experts in poker, such as myself. I thought it was a bad ruling too until Matt Savage clarified it. So I don't think this is a good look. I don't think you want to have a situation where a player like Ricky Landais, who doesn't even appear to be a poker pro, gets screwed like this, that this is the way he gets knocked out of his dream tournament. It's terrible. It's so late in that event where he could potentially win $1.1 million. So I really think that would be a nice token to do for him. And I think that would diffuse some of the outrage about this. That's what I would do if I were in charge of the World Series of Poker here. I don't think they'll do it, but I guess we'll see. People are suggesting they give him something. So unfortunate situation, and I'd be very frustrated if this occurred. I had it once at Commerce, back to another Commerce story, where I was playing very high game, like 400, 800 limit hold'em, and a dealer error cost me a flush. I forgot exactly what happened because it's been like 20 years or maybe more, but it cost me a flush in a big pot, and they ended up having to retract that card and reshuffle, and the card they put down made it where I didn't have a flush anymore, and I lost the hand, and it was thousands of dollars I lost there, and I was so pissed. And the worst thing is this dealer was really out to lunch and not paying attention. I don't usually yell at a dealer. In fact, I never do from bad beats. Like, why would I? It's not their fault. I think that's crappy to abuse a dealer because you have bad luck. But I actually did yell at that dealer because the whole time I was noticing he wasn't paying attention. And then that cost me thousands of dollars because he did something. I forgot what it was, but it was something where it made that turn that I should have had invalid. And it had to be reshuffled in. So I remember I did yell at him and tell him that you can't deal a game like this and not pay attention. If you aren't paying attention to your job, don't deal a 400, 800 game. I remember at Commerce at the time, there was this old man. I don't remember his name, but he was the director of Commerce at the time. He sometimes played in the high-stakes games too. But the guy was kind of an arrogant jerk. He was in the game when this happened, and he was very lackadaisical about it. I did talk him into giving me free rake for the next half hour, but who cares? It was a time charge, so I think, what I get, like $14 back or something. But I remember one ruling he made against me before this, so it wasn't over this that he was mad at me or something. I remember I stepped away from the table for the moment, and it was supposed to be my small blind, and I missed my small. So then I came back, and I noticed they already dealt the hand, so too late, of course. Then what happens if you miss your small is then you don't get to even sit back down to the button. The button skips you, and you come in at the cutoff, which is fine. That's standard. I expected to come in at the cutoff, and then I'd have to post a dead small blind, meaning I had to take what would be the small blind and put it in the pot, and it's already in the pot, and it doesn't count as a bet I've already made. It's not like a blind I'm posting. So that's what I was expecting to do. Well, he told me that I had to post the big and the small. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. I already posted the big. I posted the big. I missed the small. You skipped my button, so I owe the small. I'm going to put in the small dead. And he said, no. Your options are put in the big and the small dead, or you can wait till the big comes around. So either way, it's terrible. Either I pointlessly posted the big blind and had to sit out the whole round, or I had to post a second big blind dead and the small blind. So I chose the latter, but I was so pissed, and he sat there lecturing me about how he was right, which is the only time I ever saw that ever done. And I've seen it before where other players have missed their small like that, and they're required to put the small. He went and gave me a whole lecture. Well, I don't know why you're trying to tell me this, because if you could just do that, if you could just miss your small, which is the worst position to be, and then just post it dead behind the button, everybody would do that. And I said, no, they wouldn't, because they lose their button, and then the small becomes dead instead of part of your bet. Of course you can just post the dead small, just like you can post the dead big and small if you miss them both and want to enter on the cutoff. He didn't agree. He said, anytime you enter that you haven't posted both big and small, you've got to post big and small. And I was so pissed. So I don't know what happened to that guy, but after some years, he wasn't there anymore. Hopefully he got fired. Moving on, I want to talk about something that was also controversial, and a lot of people gave the World Series of Poker a hard time, and this was regarding Andrew Moreno, who is the brother of Johnny Moreno, who's also known as Johnny Vibes. Now, some people think this happened to Johnny Vibes. This didn't happen to him, what I'm about to tell you. This happened to Andrew, his brother. Andrew is also a professional poker player, Andrew's also married to a well-known poker media figure of the 2000s and early 2010s, Christy Arnett. So anyway, Andrew tweeted this about his attempt to get money over to the World Series of Poker and being denied when he tried to do it. On May 31st, he tweeted, "Arrived to the World Series of Poker today, excited to play, but sadly they would not accept my money. They asked me where the money came from, and I told them I won it in a poker tournament at Aria. I was then informed that I cannot use poker winnings to deposit into my account. However, if I had won the money playing slots or table games, they would be happy to accept my deposit. I asked if I could take the money to the bank and deposit it, and then withdraw it and bring it back to deposit. She wouldn't tell me I could do that, but if I had the bank receipt, quote, that should work." So he's claiming that his idea to just take this same cash, deposit it to the bank, and immediately withdraw it and have the receipt from it, quote, should work, according to her, the cashier that he talked to. "Hearing that other people were able to deposit cash sounds like I was a victim of inconsistent or incompetent supervisor training. The fact that some were able to do this reveals that. Who knows what the actual protocol is? The supervisor stated it was a gaming issue," meaning Nevada Gaming. "I brought a large amount of cash to deposit into my account. Supervisor stated it was a gaming issue. Sadly, was locked out of playing yesterday because of it. I'm going to the bank today to get a check. Inconsistent policy application is very consistent with the World Series of Poker. Not surprised." So most people were on his side, telling him that the World Series of Poker screwed up here, that people deposit a lot of cash all the time, that, yes, there's been inconsistent enforcement of this whole thing with putting in a lot of cash into your account, and that the World Series of Poker basically screwed him over and he couldn't play on May 31st like he wanted to because of this whole issue. Presumably the whole bank thing worked out, because I haven't heard anything from him since, that he couldn't get money into play, and indeed he was in the GG Millions, and I believe he cashed in it. So what is the story here? What really happened? Why did they refuse it? And how could this even be defensible if he just won a tournament at Aria and they were asking where he got the money and could show it? It's not like it was a cash game. He was actually claiming he got this from a tournament there, which presumably had a paper trail, as all tournaments do. So, of course, this is something that casinos are concerned about related to money laundering. It is important to understand when analyzing this story and figuring out who is right and who is wrong that there were 4 major fines paid in 2025 related to money laundering violations. And here were the fines that were paid. Resorts World paid a $10.5 million fine for anti-money laundering violations, including failure to detect and prevent illegal bookmakers and suspicious gambling activity. This is having to do with the Matt Bowyer case, the one with the ties to the Shohei Ohtani situation. That's what kind of made this whole house of cards fall down. So Matt Bowyer, who is a major sports betting bookie, who was taking big-time sports bets and then using places like Resorts World to launder some of the money. That was discovered when the feds were investigating the whole Shohei Ohtani thing, where his assistant stole from him and gambled with it. So Matt Bowyer went down, as did the CEO of Resorts World. Then MGM, which employed that same guy who was the head of Resorts World, Scott Sabella, we've talked about on this show, they paid an $8.5 million fine over the same thing. Wynn paid a $5.5 million fine in May of 2025 over a different issue that had to do with anti-money laundering issues tied to unregistered international money transfers, proxy betting, and third-party fund movement. So apparently just a lot of money that was being moved in and out of the country that they were not looking into. And then Caesars in November 2025 paid a $7.8 million fine, also related to that whole Matt Bowyer situation. So over $30 million was paid in fines in 2025 across 4 different casinos having to do with anti-money laundering violations. Now, yes, 3 of them were over the same guy, Matt Bowyer, but it was 4 different casinos, 4 different companies, and over $30 million paid total, and fines ranging from $5.5 million to $10.5 million. So this wasn't chump change they were paying. So as a result, you can imagine that these casinos are getting more careful regarding scrutinizing large deposits or large amounts of cash that are brought in to buy chips. They are required by law to investigate these and figure out if the source of funds is legitimate, because casinos have long been used to launder money. So they have procedures known as KYC, Know Your Customer. So they learn about the person that's gambling, and they understand where the money's coming from. And there's AML, which stands for anti-money laundering, and that's there are certain procedures they have to follow to make sure that money laundering isn't happening. So if somebody comes in, for example, with $3 million in cash and says, hey, I want to gamble here, give me chips, and they say, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm not employed, but I just have money. I don't really want to tell you where I got it. It's none of your business. Or if they just make up some weird story. Oh, I just do freelance work. Oh, I just trade crypto. I just came into the money. They will often not allow you to play with that money because they'll be afraid that they are being used to launder money. The reason casinos are so useful to launder money is that once you are able to buy chips with the cash, then when you cash out, it appears to be gambling winnings. Then the money becomes clean in a way. Because if you can show that you cashed out such and such while gambling at such and such place, then you can make it look like you won that money in the casino rather than you have a bunch of cash you can't explain. So a lot of times, illegal operations use casinos to launder money. You may wonder how they can get away with this if players are tracked, but not all gambling is completely tracked. And if someone gambles enough, then the whole thing can get jumbled, and the player can claim the casino just didn't track it correctly, and they actually won when the casino thought they lost, or whatever it might be. So, casinos are very popular for money laundering. There's starting to be a clampdown on this, especially since this Bowyer situation. So it wouldn't surprise me if Andrew Moreno was denied this cash deposit, which I have to think was like a 6-figure deposit. That he was denied this deposit because he was having a hard time making them believe that the source of funds was something that could be traced as legitimate. Now let's go back to the Aria tournament, though. Why didn't he just present the proof, which is all over the internet, that he won money playing at the Aria in a tournament? Because he did. Well, the part of the story he leaves out, I read you his whole series of tweets about it. The part he leaves out is the fact that his Aria win wasn't last week or a few weeks ago. It was in late January. In January, he won $162K at the $5,100 no limit in the Poker Go Tour, January 28th. And the next day, January 29th, in the same type of event, finished third for $76K. So he cashed $235K those 2 days, January 28th and 29th, combined. So, okay, that's good, but that was 4+ months ago. A lot could have happened in that time. So how long does he think it lasts? How long does he think he can take that $235K? I don't know if that's what he walked in with, but let's say that is what he deposited there, and they wouldn't let him. How long does he have to bring that in and say, oh, those are my source of funds? I won $347K when I won my bracelet in 2005. Could I go deposit $347K at the World Series and say, oh, yeah, I won that 21 years ago? Do you think they would accept that? No, of course not. It's 21 years ago. A lot of things could have happened to that money in 21 years. Well, in 4 months, that's not 21 years by any stretch of the imagination, but still, 4 months, especially for gamblers, a lot can happen. So just because he won $235K 4 months ago doesn't mean that that's the same money today. So I can understand why they would be skeptical here. So they say, well, okay, can you show aside from this where all your money comes from? Can you show us other big tournament wins that would explain this? And yeah, I mean, he did have a 252K win in September of 2025. He had a 108K win in August of 2025. And he had a 200K win in August of 2025. So he's had some good scores, and these weren't huge buy-in events. They were ranging from $1,500 to $5,000 buy-in, or actually $10,000 buy-in. So it's not like he's entering 100Ks and cashing things like this. So I'd have to imagine he's up a good deal since August of 2025. But still, you can see why if his most recent big score was 4 months ago, and then he's bringing in hundreds of thousands in cash, why they can't necessarily accept that, especially with all the paranoia these days regarding anti-money laundering. He does have almost $6.6 million in overall Hendon Mob earnings, so it's not like he's an unknown or a Johnny-come-lately. This does date back, though, to 2009. So again, you divide that over all these years, and that's not huge money. And who knows how much he spent in buy-ins of this $6.6 million. On the flip side, people reported that if they just simply told the cage that they're professional poker players and showed them proof of it, showed them a bunch of scores they've had, and showed why they would have this type of money and why it would be legally defensible if they were to be questioned by gaming, then that tended to be accepted as a reason, and they would allow the person to deposit that amount of cash. So some people think that maybe he just didn't explain it that way. He just approached, and when they asked, where's the money from? He's like, oh, well, I just won this at the Aria in January. And they're like, what? The Aria in January? Well, that's 4 months ago. We can't just accept that. And maybe he didn't communicate the rest of his winnings, that he won a bunch of money in 2025 starting in August, and that he has been cashing big in a number of events going back 16 years, and that having money like this is not foreign to him. Because I think if you were to look at Andrew Moreno's Hendon Mob, and he's trying to deposit 200 or 300K, I think it would be pretty defensible to accept that and say, okay, this guy is clearly a professional poker player who often cashes six figures. So this is totally reasonable, and no one would ever consider this money laundering. I think that would be very defensible. So maybe he just didn't frame it right. He was just too stuck on the Aria thing for 4 months ago and they didn't buy it. It's also possible that the person at the cage wasn't all that experienced and was too hardline about this. So I'm not totally defending the World Series here. If I were that employee and I just quickly Googled Andrew Moreno, I'd say, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. By itself, the January thing, I don't think is good enough to show that's a good source of funds. And the fact that he didn't mention it was January, he just said, oh, it was from an Aria tournament, doesn't bother to say it was 4 months ago. That's a big part he's leaving out, and I think on purpose. So I didn't love the way he phrased it there. I didn't love the way how he takes like 5 tweets to explain the whole thing and leaves out the fact that this was 4 months ago. If you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story. But I do think if you look at his entire recent body of work, you can look at this and say, these are clearly good sources of funds and there's nothing suspicious here. So if I were the cashier, even if it were my ass on the line, if I got in trouble for approving it, I would still approve it. I would say this one is defensible. This doesn't look like money laundering. Approved. Go ahead. Thank you for putting the cash in. And of course, they file a form with the IRS anyway, currency transaction report. So I don't see what they were that worried about. Let him deposit his damn cash and play. So a little bit of a weird ruling there by the cage. Kind of understand it. Kind of understand the paranoia that they have now. But I also think they were overzealous, and I also think that they should have looked more carefully into him. Not just the Aria thing. The only thing I got to say, though, is that if that's all he was using for justification, then I get it. So I don't know what the way the whole conversation went. A lot of times when these things are reported, people don't tell the whole story. And it's possible it just went like, they said, oh, well, Mr. Moreno, can you tell us the source of these funds? Oh, I won it at the Aria in January. Oh, okay. So that's where you got it? Yeah, oh, no, we don't really accept that. Just someone having a score 4 months ago at a poker tournament. Yeah, we don't take that. Now, I don't know why they're saying that had he won this at a table game or in slots that they would accept it. That's really weird. You win at gambling in any way 4 months ago, that's either okay or it's not okay. It doesn't matter how you win it. So that's a really weird statement if that's what they said. But putting that aside, if that's the whole justification, then yeah, I can understand it. But they should have looked further. They should have said, okay, well, is that the only money you've won recently? Can you show us what you do for a living and how much money you make? And just ask them some questions. And then once they see the situation, they should have approved it. So not the best moment for the World Series, but also I think maybe he didn't handle it perfectly. And I still don't like when people on Twitter don't tell us the whole damn story. Tell us the story. Tell us the whole damn thing, the good, the bad, the ugly. Tell us the whole damn story, or don't tell it at all. It's a pet peeve of mine when people post rage bait up on X and then they leave out a big part of the story. If you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story. And if you don't think the whole story looks good enough, then don't post it. Don't leave out the detail that was from January. And that's not a disqualifying detail. So just tell us. Don't imply. I know he didn't say it was last week, but don't imply it was recent when it was 4 months ago. It makes me feel less sorry for these people when stuff like this happens. When they try to leave parts out to manipulate our emotions and the whole thing. Because no one's forcing him to come to X with this story. So I wouldn't say he lied, but he just left out a big part. Last World Series topic. The self-parking situation at the World Series of Poker is a disaster. And it's not because they don't have enough spaces, because they do. It's the getting out at the end of the day is a disaster. This is when a lot of people are wanting to leave at once, which will typically happen when the day one of a big field event concludes. So you have a lot of people finishing their day at the same time, and then they all want to leave at the same time. They all want to go back to whatever hotel they're staying at or where their home is if they're local. So you have a lot of people leaving Horseshoe and Paris. And Horseshoe and Paris have a combined parking lot. So while it's a pretty big structure, there are not many ways to get out. If you take the ramps down, or even ramps up for that matter, you're led to an exit that only has 3 parking arms that lift up for each person going out. So that's already slow with a mass number of people exiting. Even if the thing works well, if you have a mass number of people leaving at once, then there's only 3 of those parking arms, and they have to either pay or swipe their platinum or higher card to get out for free. Even if everything works perfectly, that's going to be slow. That's going to cause a big jam getting out. But imagine if the parking arms don't work right, if they can never read the card, if even getting in they can't read the card, so if you have free parking, it can't know that and you have to take a ticket, but then of course you don't want to pay when you're driving out because you have free parking, you have to press the help button and speak to someone and have them look up your account before opening it up. A lot of people don't realize that and keep trying their card over and over and over again, it just won't work. So you have a lot of people there that are stuck for a long time. And even if you know the quickest procedure out of there regarding just pressing the help button the second you pull up to it, if you know it's not going to work, there's still time involved with them getting on, answering the phone, and looking up your account and letting you out. So this creates a terrible jam, which backs way up, and in fact backs way up the ramp. And it sometimes takes people more than an hour. In fact, some cases I've heard more than 2 hours to get out of the lot, which is inexcusable. Now, it's inexcusable in a few ways. First of all, this has been an ongoing problem. This problem has happened at that lot for at least 3 years, maybe more. And I know because I've experienced it. The most common problem when trying to use a card to get out of the lot, that is a card that will let you out for free, a platinum, diamond, or 7 stars card, when you swipe it, it says invalid credentials. That's a really obnoxious message because it makes it seem like your card is invalid. Like maybe you've been banned, maybe you've been booted out of the program, maybe you've been no offered, and that includes no longer having access to free parking. Invalid credentials. Your credentials are not good enough to get the free parking, even though you've been told you have the free parking. And you can keep swiping over and over and over. It'll say invalid credentials over and over. Now, in the past, you could keep doing it, and eventually one time it would take. I even found a little strategy with that, which I won't bother telling you because it doesn't work anymore. But I used to get it to work once out of every 6 or 7 times I try to put the card in. It's just a matter of try, it finally works, gets you out. Now it just doesn't seem to work at all most of the time. Another weird message you get, this is probably my favorite one, error number 2, CR number 7. Anyone have any idea what error number 2, CR number 7 means? No? Then why display that to the customer? Who writes these error messages? Do they understand the person who's reading the error messages is the customer? It's not an expert on the system. It's not even an employee internal to Caesars. These are customers, like you and I. So why are they saying invalid credentials or error number 2, CR number 7? It should be very clear. Card is invalid. Cannot read card. Error reading card. These would be clear messages to the user as to what's happening. So maybe the card reader isn't working properly. Maybe the card is having an issue. But what does invalid credentials or error number 2, CR number 7 mean? In general, I hate these error codes that are displayed that the consumer or the customer would never know and sometimes can't even look up. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but my dishwasher did this to me. I have a dishwasher I really like. It's a good dishwasher. Wasn't even that expensive. And they're supposed to last a while. This is one that's a model that's supposed to last, I think, 15 years or something. So it was in the middle of that, 7 years old. And this is pretty recently. I think this is in early 26. Either late 25, early 26. It gave us a weird error code. Something like error 303, something like that. I'm just making it up. It was around something like that. I had no idea what that meant. How am I supposed to know what that means? It's not in the user manual. I even used AI, and AI kind of knew it, but all the suggestions I was getting by the AI and even discussions on Reddit about it weren't helping. So I thought, this sucks. Now I have to go get a new dishwasher. And you guys probably know what a pain in the ass is having no dishwasher, especially if you have kids and a lot of dishes get generated. If you're a guy living by yourself and you're doing a lot of takeout and you're not using that many dishes and you're just one person, I guess you can get by without a dishwasher for a while. But you've got a family there with you. Dishes get generated pretty fast, and to not have a dishwasher is brutal. So I knew I was going to have to jump and get one. Everything I tried wasn't working, and some of the things I was told to try by the internet were just way too difficult and complicated that I wasn't even going to want to get into, involving taking the whole thing out and pulling off the back panel and trying this and trying that. And I go, no, I'm not going to do all that. So I was very close to buying a new one, and as a last resort, because it had mentioned to completely pull the power for 30 minutes and then plug it back in and see if that resets the message, because it was saying online that a lot of times it's a false message and that there's nothing actually wrong with the dishwasher. You've just got to get it to stop displaying that message to run, which is also stupid. You can't override it. Why would it say error whatever and not let you run it? Why not let you run it? It's your machine. If you want to mess something up further, let you run it. You should be able to override it and say, okay, well, I'm going to run it anyway. I don't care. I'll take responsibility for whatever happens. But you couldn't do it. With that error it was displaying, you would not start. So anyway, I did the thing with the 30 minutes off. I even left it off an hour. Didn't work. Came right back with that same error. So I unplugged it again just because I'm well, what's the point to leave it plugged in? So I unplugged it again. Tried it 2 days later. I couldn't believe it. I plugged it back in. The error message was gone. And then I ran a test run of it just for a short cycle to see if it would work. It did. Then I ran a regular cycle with actual dishes. It worked. And now it's worked for the last 6+ months with no problem. It's like it never happened. So that whole error that was preventing me from using my dishwasher was false. This code I didn't understand. The whole thing was false. I just had to make it go away by leaving it unplugged for 2 days. My guess, if you must ask me what I think about that dishwasher error, I think that maybe something in it was overheating or something, and then it caused that error message to kick, and as long as it's plugged in, it will still think it's overheating because it's still hot, because it's still technically on, and it just won't clear it. And I think maybe being off 2 days and having no electricity to it, the whole thing cooled down. And then when I restarted it, it didn't get it, and then nothing happened to trip it again. Who knows what caused it to happen in the first place, but I think it was one of these things that just needed to completely be off and get cold and restart. So that's my guess as to what happened. But there was no actual problem because I've been using the thing for more than 6 months since then, and the dishes are still getting very clean. So the whole error was nonsense that also almost made me throw away the whole thing and buy a new dishwasher. And replacing it would have been quite expensive. So very happy that not only for the money, but also the trouble of this, that went away. So it reminds me a bit of the Caesars thing, where you got this error code, you have no idea what the hell's happening. But my favorite one, I should say my favorite is this, not the error CR number 7. My favorite one is when it actually gives you the wrong name and lets you in. So after multiple attempts to swipe like 2 years ago, it finally opened the arm and said, "Hello, Dustin. Welcome." Now, maybe they thought I was Dustin Wolf, Neverwin, the original of Neverwin Poker. Maybe. They thought I was some Dustin. So it actually misread my card and let me in as Dustin. And then guess what happened when it was time to leave? I swiped my card, and it gave me invalid credential because, well, it didn't see I was in the lot. To let me out of the lot, it has to know I'm in the lot. It didn't think I'm in the lot because Dustin's in the lot. And if Dustin was unfortunate enough to be in Vegas at the same time as me, and he tried to enter, it wouldn't let him in because he's already in the lot, which is really me. It's a really wonderful system they have there. So, of course, they had to get them to let me out, and I had to explain to them what happened. But that wasn't the only time it greeted me under a different name. I've had this happen multiple times. The first time was Dustin, but then I had other times where it was greeting me under a different person's name and letting me in. I think another one was Brian. So how's that even happening? So it's a very, very buggy system, and they've had 3 years at least to fix it. So it's not like this just happened last month and it's just really bad timing for the World Series. They've had years to fix this, and they have not fixed this. Why? Because forget the World Series. This is really frustrating for the normal customers at every other time of the year, for everybody going to Horseshoe or Paris. So why, at 2 of their major properties, why would they not invest in fixing this? I don't care if they have to tear out the whole machines and replace them. I don't care if they have to take these machines offline completely for a little bit, let people park for free, and get a different company to replace it. I mean, whatever they have going on, if they've either bought these machines or they have a contract with a company to maintain them, either that company isn't performing and needs to start performing, or they should have a right to terminate the contract, or if they bought these machines, they should be able to trash them and switch to a different provider. But just to leave them like this is insane. I don't know what they're thinking. Like, I understand that El Dorado, the owner, is cheap, but this is self-defeating cheap. This doesn't make any sense because it's making them less money, I have to imagine, because people aren't going to want to come here if they're running into this, getting in and out. Why frustrate the customer like this? It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know why they don't fix it. So this has been a complaint each year. It gets worse and worse. So at this point, when I have tried to enter and exit that structure, every single time but one, it just absolutely will not take my card. One time, amazingly, it took it, and then it actually read my plate properly driving out, because what it's supposed to do is take your card, open it, and then when you drive up, it reads your license plate and then knows that you're someone who's there for free and just opens for you. So that actually worked once, but every other time so far, it has refused to take my card no matter how many times I tried. And I had to take a ticket and then explain on the way out. But forget about me. Let's go back to everybody else. They have been getting caught in a tremendous jam on those days where everyone's getting out at the same time. Now, if you bust in the middle of the day, then you're probably not going to run into a huge crowd of people leaving unless you're unfortunate enough to run into a crowd from another event. But if you're making it to the end of a day of a big event, yes, you're going to have a big jam getting out of here. Jeff Platt, who does interviews around the World Series and was infamous for bringing bad luck to people, that whoever he interviewed would bust right away. In fact, I saw it happen at the World Series main event in 2023 when he interviewed former main event champ Scott Blumfield, who was right next to me, and then Blumfield busted like very shortly after that. It was amazing how many people busted shortly after interviewing with Jeff Platt. But anyway, he's working with the World Series again this year, and he's taken upon himself, even though he's not someone who has this as his official job, but he's taken it upon himself to try to get Caesars to improve the parking situation. Remember, World Series of Poker is not owned by Caesars anymore. It's done in cooperation with Caesars, and it's Caesars Properties, but it's owned by GG Poker. So he is trying to work with the Caesars executives to do something about this. But unfortunately, nothing's been done yet. I'm still running into the same shit. I haven't gotten to a jam because I haven't had to leave at the time when the jams happen. But I have had the crap where I can't get in and out with the card properly. And others have reported, in fact, with pictures, including Alan Kessler, on X showing these horrible jams. So it just doesn't seem to be improving. Now, my idea, I posted this on X, is that they should just open up the arms and let people out for free during the period when people are going to be exiting en masse, such as at the end of a day one of a big event. That they know approximately when this is going to occur because they have a schedule. So they should open up the lot starting from like 15 minutes before that time through an hour after that time, or maybe an hour and a half after that time. Yes, they'll lose money for those that otherwise would have had to pay for parking and get to exit for free. But hey, that's the price you have to pay when you're not fixing your parking system. I should also say that MGM properties, they let you out for free a lot. I've had it many times, even though I have free parking there too. And by the way, if you want free parking at MGM properties, I'll give you a tip. I've given this before, but just want to mention this. Get their MGM credit card because there's no fee. And as long as you have that card and use it like once a year, like you can just get that card and charge like $5 on it a year, then you will be perpetual Pearl status, which is enough to get you free parking. You don't get much else, but it's enough to get free parking. So that's how I'm Pearl over at MGM properties, is from that credit card. And this allows me to park at places like Bellagio and Aria and all that and never pay. But I've seen, when I've been to places like Bellagio and Aria, that sometimes I will exit and it'll say free parking. It'll actually have a little smiley face with a wink, like an emoji, that says free parking, and you get to just drive through, which is a little bit obnoxious to have that emoji. But okay, it's free. I don't need it because it's free for me anyway. But they're not doing this to be generous. Actually, it says free passage, not free parking. I remember the message now. They're not giving you free passage to be generous. Presumably, they're doing it because their parking system is having a temporary problem. So they opened it up and let you out. And I've seen other properties do this. But where I've never seen it has been a Caesars property. I've never seen them once just leave it open. But they need to start leaving it open when it is malfunctioning. Or at least leave it open when there's a mass number of people coming out and it's malfunctioning. And you know what? Even if it's working properly, as I said, it's still going to create a backup because they only have 3 of those arms. So why not just open it anyway as a little service to World Series of Poker players? So I suggested this, and Jeff Platt then DM'd me on X, and I don't usually talk about people's DMs to me, but I assume this one is okay to share. Jeff said to me that he already thought of this idea, and he suggested it to them, and they said they're considering it. But as far as I've seen so far, that hasn't happened. So it looks like this is way beyond Jeff's control and way beyond the World Series control. I would think they have more influence here. I would think they could say this is violating their contract with Caesars to not let people out without this tremendous jam, that they have to find some way to cooperate. So I'm surprised World Series hasn't pressed harder on this. I know Jeff is not an executive there or anything, so there's only so much he can do. But why doesn't someone higher up, like Ty Stewart or Jack Effel, put some pressure on them here? That's what they need to do, because this is ridiculous. Now, I want to give you some value in listening to this show. I want to provide some information to you that's going to be useful. And this is something I refuse to post publicly on X because I don't want to give it to the masses on X, but I will give it to the people listening to this show as a little reward for listening to this show. The only thing I ask of you is don't just go post this up on X, because I'm sharing it on this show so the listeners to this show can make use of it. But if you post it on X, then the more people that know this, it might ruin the whole thing to where it's not going to work the way it works right now. You'll understand when I tell you. But I'm going to give you a trick on how to get out of the lot relatively quickly when those tremendous jams occur on those 3 parking arms to get out of here, because there are 2 other parking arms to get out that are hidden and that are not used very often. Now, I'm not saying nobody knows about them. That would not be accurate to say. There's a number of locals who know about them, and there's a number of employees who know about them, and then there are a number of experienced people here, such as myself, who know about them. But the masses don't. So when there's a tremendous line that's going to take an hour, if you go to the secret 2 arms to get out in a different area of the lot, you'll wait 5 minutes maybe. So it's a tremendous difference. So where are these 2 parking arms? They are on the 3rd floor. So you got to get to the 3rd floor of the parking structure. If you are parked at the 3rd floor, great. Just loop around and you'll find the arms there. You just loop around the 3rd floor, you'll find it. If you're lower than the 3rd floor, again, great, because then you just go up, and there's never a jam going up. When there's a big jam getting out, there's never a jam getting in. So you can go up very easily without a jam if you're on 1 or 2. So if you're on 1, 2, or 3, then you're sitting pretty. You can either go up or you're already on the 3rd floor, and then you can get out. And I'll tell you what to do once you get out, because it's a bit different than getting out of the normal way. So what if you're on the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th floor? Then what do you do? Because the ramp going down, as I mentioned before, gets backed up very easily. So what do you do if you're trying to get to the 3rd floor for this, but there's a tremendous jam even getting to the 3rd floor? How do you get there? Do you just wait until you can finally get to the 3rd floor? I mean, it's a little bit faster to do it that way, but it's still not ideal. You'll still be waiting a while. So what I suggest you do, if you are on a floor above 3 and run into a jam like this and the ramp is jammed and you can't get to 3, drive the wrong way. I'm not even kidding. Go as far as you can on the down part of the ramp, and then once it backs up, then go over to the other side and just drive very slowly and carefully to get over to floor 3, and then loop around and get over to the 2 arms that let you out there. In fact, you don't have to loop around much. It's pretty close once you get right there. Once you get down the up ramp, then you're pretty close to it anyway. But the point is that you want to get to the 3rd floor, and it's not as dangerous as it sounds. You may be thinking, what are you talking about? Drive down the up ramp. That sounds like a sure head-on collision. Well, no, because people are usually not speeding up at 30 miles per hour on the ramps there. So they're usually going at a relatively slow rate of speed. And also, it's pretty easy to see who's coming. So if you just do it very carefully, and it's also pretty wide so you can move out of the way. So you just have to look carefully of what's coming, and if something is coming, you quickly just move over and get out of their way. You can even honk, flash your lights, whatever, just let them know you're there. They'll think it's a bit weird, but they'll get by you. So you just got to kind of look down, see if anyone's coming, and then just kind of move quickly down the opposite way to get to that 3rd floor, and then get out. And this isn't me being a kamikaze driver. This is what all the locals do when this jam occurs. This is not even my trick. I saw others doing it, and that's how I learned it. So this is what you do to get out, and it's much, much faster than sitting in that hour-long line. Much faster. Now, once you're out, then it's going to take you down this ramp that's literally on the side of the building. It's a very weird ramp, and that's the same ramp you end up at if you drive through the little tunnel under Horseshoe to originally get into the lot. There's 2 ways into the lot and out of the lot, the same entrance exit. So you're going to be on this weird ramp that's actually alongside of the building. And then when you're at the bottom of it, there's 2 things you can do. You can keep going straight, and you're going to end up on the Las Vegas Strip, Las Vegas Boulevard, or you can turn right immediately at the bottom of the ramp, and you're going to go through a little tunnel under a structure that's part of the Horseshoe, and then you're going to find yourself in the Horseshoe Valet area, where you can then pop out on Flamingo Road going east. So if you want to go Flamingo Road east, then go that way, go turn right. If you want to go to the Strip, then you go straight. Those are your two choices right there. So that's the secret way out. Not a super secret, but a moderate secret. So while this isn't something that only I know, this has not been posted anywhere publicly. This was posted by one person who knew it. I think it was Nikki Limo who posted this. And then she deleted it pretty quickly. Like an hour later, it was gone. So people must have DM'd her and said, don't do that. Because the reason you don't want to publicize this everywhere is because if too many people know this, then it will no longer work anymore. Because then that'll be jammed too. So as much as I'd like to help everybody, if I helped everybody, then we would have terrible jams at both exits. So there's no point. So we might as well leave one good for the people in the know. And since we don't have a tremendously large audience of this show, I can tell you guys, whereas if I post it on X, then it could get 100,000 views if it gets distributed and retweeted a lot, and then everyone's going to know. So please just don't post it publicly, but I'm telling you, the listener of this show, in case you can make use of it. Okay, I have to admit something to you guys. There was more to this show. There was 2 hours or so more to this show. And unfortunately, there was a crash of the show in the middle because of a sound issue. Then the whole show went down, so I put it back up. And then when I put it back up, it did not record. So I spent 2 hours basically talking to myself and the live listenership at 6 in the morning, which was not very big. And then when I went to go download the show to edit it, I found out the bad news that only the first half was saved. So this outro you're hearing right now is not the original outro. I did make an outro. I did have the usual ending, but that's gone too. So I'm having to do this one in editing. So this actually was not recorded at the same time as the rest of the show. And I'm breaking the bad news to you. I removed the other 3 topics from the intro so you don't get confused. But I'm definitely going to come back to them because we have 3 important topics that I wanted to cover and did cover, but now I have to cover them again. In case you're counting, this is the second time in 3 shows that I've lost content. If you remember the show at the end of April, I lost the entire show because of a massive system crash before I could download it. So I said, okay, I'm going to learn my lesson. I'm going to download the show immediately upon finishing it. And I've been doing that since then, but I didn't bother to check that when the show crashed and came back up, that it was recording again. That's never happened to me before, but happened to me this time. So that was very frustrating. Otherwise, you would have 2 more hours to listen to. So sorry about that, but sorry to me too, because I wasted my time. Now I have to go do that all over again. It feels weird to do a show all over again that I did the first time. But hey, I did that to substitute for that April show we lost, and I guess I will do this again here for those final 2 hours. I'll definitely have more World Series of Poker content for you coming up in the upcoming weeks, so stay tuned. And thank you for listening to Poker Fraud Alert Radio. Hopefully I have a deep cache in there for myself somewhere in this series, especially the main. Shalom.